Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a delightfully in-your-face episode of Monster Party.
Monster Party! I have monsters. It's coming at you.
Coming at you.
It's exciting. It's thrilling. That's great.
Nice, Sean.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm
boy,
excited.
I think we've tipped the topic a little bit here.
Yes, and Mr. Tipper, who are you, sir?
I am Matt Weinhold.
I am Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Strothe.
And I'm James Gonis.
What does that mean?
It's my special voice for tonight's amazing topic.
Dramamine? What is that?
Well, maybe if you get to it, because I'm excited.
All right, here we go. The topic for tonight is the world of 3D.
The world of 3D.
World of 3D. Which now you
It
might
leaps from the screen.
now you might say, well, how is that cool? Because I live in the world of 3D.
Right?
But no, we're talking about 2D that is made to look 3D.
Yes.
Movies that come at you.
Movies, paper.
Paper, posters.
Yeah.
Things
yeah.
that just look at
Anything
leap
related
out at
to
you.
the three-dimensional phenomenon.
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
we have
Oh, boy.
a perfect guest. I mean, this is the one guy. If you're
Yeah.
going to do a show
The
about
guy.
3D,
The man.
If you don't get him, forget it.
No,
you failed.
No, and you know
failed at
that's,
life.
That's
you
why
failed your
yes,
family.
Yes, and you know what, Matt? That's why people have asked, why haven't you done a 3D show sooner? Well, it's because I was waiting for the perfect opportunity
There you go.
to get this amazing
That's right.
guest.
Indeed.
Guys, let me tell you who we have. We have again the perfect guest. This guest. He's a producer, a director, a consultant for everything 3D. He is the founder, CEO, executive director of 3D Space, which is an organization that's dedicated to both the preservation and the history of stereoscopic imaging and the advancement of the current and future 3D projects.
And he's brought us so much joy.
Oh, he really has, and he is a stereoscopic 3D specialist and consultant. He's dealt with tons of productions, post production, the exhibition of so many stereoscopic 3D content. He's worked for numerous clients such as Film Roman Animation, Nintendo of America, National Geographic, and he's done The Simpsons for Fox. This he's Mr. 3D.
Wow. Do
Guys-
you know Dana Gould?
We've met, yeah.
Yes. Well, put your hands together.
Dana's pretty cool.
Guys,
Dana's
put
the
your
greatest.
3D hands together for Eric Kurland.
Eric Kurland.
Thanks for having me here.
Oh,
Thanks for
man.
being here.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr.
man.
3D.
Yeah.
That's,
And,
yes.
and you not only did you come just to be on the
in
show
3D.
in 3D. No, yeah, you didn't do a tintype and then send it to us with a speaker. You are here in person, and you brought so many treasures too, magazines and
Comics.
comics,
Oh, yeah. Well-
and all kinds of 3D
Film reels.
artifacts.
I have a whole museum's worth of 3D stuff. So
I can
figured
tell.
I'd bring some things that were kind of fun to look at.
yeah.
Awesome.
And they are, and really great stuff. Now, I would like to know right off the bat, how did you become such a 3D enthusiast? What was that moment where you went, wow, I need to just drink up as much of this thing as I can?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, okay. Roll back to when I was 7 years old.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'd been wearing glasses since I was 3.
Okay.
My left eye is weaker than my right. And I had a toy Viewmaster. Everybody had a Viewmaster.
Sure. Oh, yeah. We all love them.
Viewmaster.
You know, you pop in the reel and you click through 7 pictures. And because my left eye was weaker, I would always close it when I would look into the Viewmaster. So I was about 7 years old, and I can tell you exactly what I was looking at. It was Popeye.
Oh, James, it's your
And-
favorite.
I
And it
have
was
that Viewmaster.
It was
Yeah.
the picture was Popeye and olive oil, and there were all these little hearts floating over their heads.
And is this one of the ones where it was like a
3D-dimensional
3D
model?
No,
it was a model
this
or
one
a cartoon?
this one was a drawn cartoon.
Okay.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, I opened my left eye, so I actually looked at both the left and the right pictures. And I guess it's appropriate that it was Popeye because it just like popped into 3D. And like this light bulb went off that oh my God, this is how you're supposed to see these things. Do all my reels do this? And so I like ran around the house grabbing all the ViewMaster reels I could find and putting them in. And yeah, everything was 3D.
Did your eyes adjust when you were looking through the ViewMaster?
Yeah. I mean, it was, I could focus on it. So,
Okay.
Right.
it just like, I had this moment of shock that was like, oh wow, these are all 3D. I need to see more of this. And then I got some 3D comic books and just started collecting 3D stuff. And it wasn't actually until much later that I realized that I could make 3D.
That just seems like sorcery.
It totally.
Yeah. Well,
you could make it.
I've always loved like technology that seemed like magic. 3D has a sense of that.
Yeah,
Because, it's flat on the page or
it is.
Right.
and then you put the glasses on and then, it's this magical picture
It
that's
jumps out at you.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
It's like leaping off the page.
I had a book with a lenticular cover on it,
Oh yeah.
and that was amazing because you could see 3D in it without glasses.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
I
shift it.
love
Yeah.
those things. Yeah.
So I guess it was around 2000, 2001 that I started thinking, you know what, maybe I can make some 3D stuff. And with digital cameras and digital camcorders, I was able to actually start like shooting my own 3D stuff. Kind of coined the term 3DIY, do-it-yourself 3D, because at the time nobody was doing 3D then.
You start.
No, and I know.
It's 3D.
3DIY.
3DIY.
Yeah,
you
do it yourself 3D.
You started that.
Well, no, I didn't start it.
Well,
But, I mean, a lot of people have been taking 3D pictures going all the way back to the dawn of photography in the 1800s.
Yeah, what is it?
But the-
stereoscopes or
Yeah.
Stereopticon.
In fact,
Yeah.
if you want a little history lesson.
I do. I
Please.
wonder
Okay.
what is 3D? Where did it start?
what is 3D?
Sure.
Define 3 dimensions
Hey.
and then move on.
Look,
from there.
we have an expert here, so
Yes.
okay.
Okay, well, most of the people that you run into have two eyes.
Yes.
except
Some have
Popeye.
3.
And there's the occasional cyclops.
Popeye only has one eye. So go ahead.
Okay, very funny. Okay.
But because we have two eyes,
Yes.
and our eyes are set on average about 2.5 inches apart, we see two different, very slightly different views of the world. There's a very small amount of parallax between what we see in our left eye and our right eye. And our brain fuses those two views together and using something it's called binocular stereopsis. All of those little changes and differences in parallax, all the little disparities in the parallax get interpreted as depth. So it's actually, it's all in your head because
Right, right.
I knew it.
Each eye is seeing just a 2D image.
Right,
But
right.
because you're seeing two 2D images from two different points of view, your brain interprets that into depth.
Which
And
is
it-
also kind of like how motion pictures work too. Right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Persistence
Right,
of vision, because, every one of those frames on screen is a separate individual picture. But
Right.
our brains are able to process that into motion. So there's a lot of depth cues that we use. If you shift your head back and forth, you'll see the parallax. Something that's closer to you seems to move a lot more than something that's far away from you.
We get dizzy too.
And we know the relative size of things. So if you see like a big chicken and a tiny elephant, your brain says, "Oh, the elephant must be further away than the chicken."
Right.
Unless it's a mutant.
Unless
chicken.
it's a mutant chicken. Yeah.
How's that screenplay coming along, Sean?
So there's all these different cues that we have to determine depth. Binocular vision is the only one that requires two eyes, but it's the one that gives us that 3D vision.
Right.
And not everyone sees 3D properly. Depending on what study you look at, you could have maybe 8 to 10% of the population that didn't develop binocular stereopsis.
Okay.
It's a learned trait. When you see a baby reaching out and kind of looking at their hands,
Yeah.
they're learning how to see the world in 3D. Mm-hmm. And it's generally believed that if you have vision problems and don't develop stereopsis by the time you're like 5, you're probably not going to see full 3D the way the other 80% of the population
Really?
does.
Wow.
Oh, interesting.
There are exceptions to that.
Sure.
There's a fascinating book called Fixing My Gaze by Dr. Susan Barry. She was born with strabismus. Her eyes were crossed. So she didn't learn to see 3D. And then in her 40s, she taught herself how. It's really interesting. read.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's not something that can you medically correct that or?
You can fix where your eyes are looking, But to actually see 3D, you have to learn it.
Okay.
What she did a whole bunch of visual exercises. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's like any other thing. You go to the gym to work out and get your muscles in shape.
This way you work out your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, ophthalmologists tend to agree that looking at 3D is healthy.
Hear that, James?
If you have difficulty with 3D, actually looking at more 3D, some people do complain, that they get dizzy or they get eye strain or whatever. But if you think about it, like if you go to the gym and you haven't been to the gym in a couple years, the first couple workouts, you're really going to feel it. It's going to hurt.
Yeah.
But once you've been going to the gym for a year, it just becomes something that, it's comfortable doing.
Yeah.
And 3D is pretty much the same way. The first time you look at it, if you're not comfortable with it, actually looking at more 3D can work those ocular muscles.
Interesting.
I had a lot of uncomfortable 3D situations in the 80s when I went to some of those movies.
Really?
Okay.
Had nothing, had nothing to do with the 3D. It was
okay.
computer dating was in its infancy.
The other thing about looking at 3D is it's one of the few mediums where if it's not done well, it can cause pain and discomfort in the audience.
Right.
So how do you know the difference?
So, like for instance, if you have any vertical mismatch between what you're seeing in your left eye and your right eye,
Right.
you're essentially asking the viewer to look up with one eye and down with the other. And, we don't do that.
Sure.
Except for like Alfred E. Newman.
Right. So like I have very low tolerance for vertical mismatch. It makes me very dizzy.
Right.
And you're an expert.
And yeah. I mean, if you do it poorly,
Right.
you can cause a lot of discomfort in your audience. And you mentioned seeing 3D in the 80s. It wasn't the optimal presentation.
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's say now the first time we saw 3D though, it wasn't my first thought. Well, it was the 50s. No, 3D started way.
What's the first 3D movie?
Yeah, because I was under the I think I said this before, that it's kind of fairly well known, but incorrectly, that Buona Devil, which is a movie that came out in 1952. That was like maybe the first feature film.
It actually was not the first feature.
Not. Okay, so that's right.
Oh, so Sean, you are wrong.
No, I read that. I read that was incorrect.
It was the first feature film of the 1950s 3D craze.
Okay. Right.
But there was the first 3D feature film was actually released in the 1920s.
Wow.
No.
It's a lost film. It's a lost silent film now.
Oh well, how do you know it exists?
There's news accounts of
Well,
it.
it's
And
okay
actually
if-
the first like public 3D screening for an audience happened in New York in 1915.
Okay.
Wow. So that early on, the filmmaker were
But
experimenting.
there
with
was
it.
3D long before that.
Before that?
Yeah,
like in prehistoric times.
Well, no. But in the 1830s,
1830.
a British scientist, Sir Charles Wheatstone, he was the first to write up a theory that we see 3D because we've got two eyes.
Right.
Right.
And to prove his theory, he built a device that used mirrors and a couple of drawings from two different perspectives. And if you looked one eye into one mirror and one eye into the other and looked at these drawings, you saw a 3D picture.
But now,
So
he,
that's considered like the first actual
Experiment,
stereoscopic picture.
he could have just closed one eye and proved a little
But
cheaper.
this is for the skeptics, Matt.
Okay.
For the
No,
No,
skeptics.
but what he was trying to prove was that if you had two flat drawings that were
Together, they could-
drawn from two slightly different perspectives,
produce something that's
and you viewed one in one eye and one in the other, you'd see it as 3D relief.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so
Right.
he proved that, and he actually coined the term stereoscope. That's what he called the device he
Okay.
made.
Oh, wow. And he was later burned as a witch.
well, and that's the thing too, is that when you see these documentary where someone's watching like the Great Train Robbery,
Yeah.
and they freak out
Right,
because
right.
someone's shooting at them. And I would think that you so that freaks them out. You show them a 3D movie.
Oh my gosh.
It just ruins their life.
Yeah.
Well, this predated even photography because this was
That's amazing.
1830,
Yeah, that's
1839.
amazing.
And the word stereoscopic, this was something that Wheatstone came up with. It actually comes from the Greek.
The Greeks, James.
Scopic means to see,
Does it?
and stereo means solid. So stereoscopic actually means to see solid, and stereo was a Greek term used for sculpture.
I did not. James, did you know that?
Of course. I know.
Yeah, people think that stereo means like left and right.
That's
it
what I
doesn't.
thought.
It actually means
Like
solid.
Okay.
I did not know that. I've just been
So it's
educated.
two things making a solid.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, or something-
stereoscopic is to see something solid.
Not flat.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
Right. Oh, wow. Cool. So, but
we are
So-
educating our
so-
listeners.
So,
Yes.
so then, okay, move to the 1850s. Now, photography is in its early phases. And some of the earliest photographers realized that if they took a picture and then moved the camera over a couple inches and took a second picture, if the subject didn't move, they'd have a left view and a right view that they could look at in a stereoscope and see in 3D.
okay. Okay.
And is that like I've seen some of these old time pictures where it's like they have these a little viewer and they put these double picture.
Oh, yeah,
Is
yeah,
that, I've
yeah.
seen that like
yeah.
movies about
Sure, yeah.
the 18th century.
Sure.
You could find these things at antique stores.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, another British scientist, Sir David Brewster, in the 1850s, he wrote a whole book on the stereoscope and built the first like handheld stereoscope with lenses where you could put two pictures in it and take
Wow.
a look at it. He showed it at the Great Exhibition of London. And there's kind of an apocryphal story that Queen Victoria took a look at it and declared that, she liked it.
So he was not burned as a witch.
But essentially, he showed this thing, and he was a really good marketing guy. He may have come up with that story himself.
Right.
But he ended up selling these stereoscopes. Like everyone in British high society had to have one for their parlor.
Oh, wow. It was like the television of its day.
It actually, very much so. And here in the U.S., I mean, these stereoscopes were really like ornate oak boxes. Here in the U.S., Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., he was the father of the Supreme Court Justice. He was a physician, and he wanted to design a stereoscope that anyone could own.
The common man.
The common man, yeah. So the ones that you see in attics and flea markets and all that, it's just like a wood stick with a little hood on one end.
That's what I've seen.
And you put
Right,
the cards in
right.
the back.
Yeah.
Those are typically called a Holmes stereoscope.
Okay.
And in the 1860s, those were ubiquitous. They were everywhere. It was the home entertainment system at the time. And like every town had their general store, and you could go down there and buy boxes of the cards. And it really kind of followed the razor blade model. Sell them a cheap viewer. And then
Okay.
they have to keep coming
right.
back to buy the expensive
Right.
pictures
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah. Hello, Blu-ray.
But the kind of interesting thing about it is, this was essentially, Victorian era virtual reality, because the idea behind it was there were companies like the Keystone Company and London Stereoscopic Company would send photographers all over the world. They chronicled just about everything that you could imagine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There was like travel to far off lands. There were comedies, dramas, sexy stuff. There was,
Back up.
yeah.
Wait, like really sexy stuff?
Well,
Like-
like
Really sexy.
Victorian boudoir photography.
Oh, I see.
Okay,
I see.
right.
A glimpse of stocking.
Right. In 3D.
Nice one, James.
The stuff that was being photographed in Paris was actually quite risque at the time.
Yeah. A glimpse of.
And you could buy these boxes with stories of just about everything imaginable, and most people couldn't travel. Back
Right.
then.
It was your way of
So
seeing.
if
the world,
you
basically.
wanted to see the Egyptian pyramids, so you could go and buy a box of them, and it was in 3D, and
Right,
you felt
right.
like you were there. And this was really very, very popular in the 1860s. The whole American Civil War was like chronicled by 3D photographers.
I've seen
yeah.
a few pictures of in the Civil War that were 3D.
Yeah. Abraham Lincoln sat for 3D portraits at Matthew Brady's studio in Washington.
Wow.
No, I didn't know that.
So there's several really great 3D pictures of Abraham Lincoln.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
So 3D. It started a long time ago,
Yeah.
but when we get to the motion picture,
Right.
Yeah.
right.
I mean, was it though that was Buona Devil? Is that one of the films that kind of started the craze though?
Yeah.
Because it was marketed pretty well.
Well,
right?
yeah. There'd been some attempts at 3D prior to that. Like I said, in 1915 there was a demonstration in New York. In the 1920s, there were several 3D films released, silent films. In the 1930s, there were some films done at MGM, and these early films were all released using what's called anaglyph. That's the red and blue glasses.
I see. Yeah,
Which actually comes out of printing. It was a technique used to print 3D pictures on like a single image on a page.
Right.
Because in order to be able to see both the left and the right view in a printed picture, you either need optics that lets you focus on two separate pictures,
Right.
or you print them together using two different colors.
Right.
So these early films used these color techniques. There was the Ziegfeld Follies in the 1920s did a shadow dance show where they used a red light and a green light, so the shadows were all in 3D.
That's cool.
Wow.
And these films aren't lost, right? These movies.
The 1930s films still exist. They're actually some of the 1920s material is still around, but that first feature film, it's
Lost.
It's lost.
Oh,
it's
right.
it's one of those holy grails that we're still hoping to find sometime.
Okay, but the film process, is it right now when you said it's the red, blue, is it one strip of film?
Yeah.
Because we haven't
Well,
got to this advance where it's like two. So
Well, actually, some of those early ones, there was actually an interesting technique used in the 1920s. There was a guy, Lawrence Hammond. He's the guy who invented the Hammond organ.
Oh, wow.
And,
That's a good organ.
And he came up with a system he called the Teleview system that actually used a mechanical shutter. It was a spinning metal disc with like half of it's open and half of it's solid.
Right.
And he projected a film that had alternating frames, left, right, left, right, left, right. So you looked through this spinning viewer, and when it's projecting the left frame, you see through the left eye side of it. And then the shutter spins. When it projects the right frame, you see that in your right eye. And my understanding is this only lasted like a day or two. I mean, you're effectively asking everyone in your audience to put their face right up to like a spinning rotor blade.
no,
Don't knock it till you try it.
I didn't think about that.
But it's interesting because that whole technique,
Yeah,
now we have electronic shutter glasses that effectively do the same thing.
sure.
Yeah.
But back in the day,
But back in the day, yeah,
they had to put you by this dangerous piece of equipment.
it was an interesting attempt at 3D.
Sure.
The 3D-atine.
But yeah, 3D presentation for an audience wasn't the easiest thing to do.
Right.
Right.
If you were going to project from two projectors, one for the left eye and one for the right, you had to keep them in perfect synchronization.
Exactly.
all the time,
So
right.
this is the big issue. So when they move to this system where you have two projectors and one has the film for the left eye, the other for the right eye, and they have to be shown at exactly the right frame. Right frame. If you're off by a frame or so, you're screwed. It's totally messed up.
A Hollywood screenwriter by the name of Milton Gunsberg. His brother was an ophthalmologist, Milton and Julian Gunsberg. They started a company called the Natural Vision Company, and this was late 1940s, 1950. They were both very interested in 3D and saw the potential for making 3D movies. So they hired a couple of camera engineers, a guy named Friend Baker and a guy named Lothrop Worth, to build a system that they could use to synchronize two cameras to shoot 35 millimeter film for the left eye and the right eye. And this system is called Natural Vision. And once they had a working camera and working projection for it, they started showing this to like everyone in Hollywood that they could invite in. And what I should say, they were showing this using polarized projection, which was actually a technique that was developed at the Polaroid company. It's actually where the Polaroid company got its name for polarizing filters.
Okay.
At the 1939 World's Fair in New York, the Polaroid company demonstrated the first polarized 3D projection in the Chrysler Pavilion. And there was a film called In Tune with Tomorrow. There was a stop-motion animated film of a car assembling itself. And they showed this to audiences, and they gave them special polarized viewers that were shaped like a car and had polarizing filters, very much like what you get when you go to a theater now.
Right.
Right.
Do you have any of those?
I do have those. Yeah. I have both the 1939 version and the 1940 version. They remade the film in 1940 in color. The original version was black and white.
Okay.
And so that was one of the first public shows that was done with polarized projection, where
Right.
you need two projectors running in perfect synchronization with polarizing filters in front of the projectors. One set at 45 degrees, one set at 135 degrees. So they're exact opposite directions. And then the filters in the glasses that you're wearing match the angles of those polarizers. And you need a silver screen. It's got to be a metallic aluminum screen that holds that polarization. If you project polarized onto a white screen, all the light gets dispersed.
Right.
Got it.
So with the silver screen, the synchronized projectors, and the filters, you can see 3D. So the Gunsbergs had seen this. 1950, they were inviting everyone to see these demonstrations. And at one point, they brought in writer-director Arch Oboler.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oboler had written a lot of science fiction for radio.
Right.
Lights out.
Yeah. And he had just gone into production on a movie that was starring Robert Stack. I believe it was called The Lions of Gulu. And he was making it independently. He didn't have a studio making it. And he saw this demonstration and realized, this is what I need for my picture. And
So he had no intention before that?
No, he'd actually already shot quite a bit of it.
Wow, okay.
And the story, as I understand it, is, he threw out everything he'd shot.
Really?
And he actually convinced Robert Stack to put up money into the production.
No.
Wow.
Saying this is going to make our picture unique. And they went back and started shooting all over again.
And the movie was like, it was like these people in Africa, they're being hunted by these lions, right?
Yeah,
It was like they're being terrorized by these
it's the story of they're trying to put a train through
British
Africa.
Railway. Right.
Yeah. The crews keep getting attacked by this lion.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a cheesy movie.
Right.
But they shot it using this massive natural vision camera rig. Weighed hundreds of pounds, had two Mitchell 35 millimeter cameras inside, pointed lens to lens into a pair of mirrors. And they had to do it this way so that they could actually get the lenses of the cameras closer together than the bodies of the cameras would allow. So they're shooting into these mirrors.
Sure.
That way they can get the lenses, to like
I see.
2.5 inches.
Got
Right.
it. I got it. Mm-hmm.
And so the whole thing had to be moved around like on a crane or a forklift. And I should say, I actually have a natural vision camera rig in my museum collection.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I actually have one of the skulls of the Lions of Gulu.
Very cool. Very cool. Those are even more rare. So they shot this in 3D and released it around Thanksgiving of 1952.
And they really hyped up the 3D gimmick, right?
Well, it was showing at a theater in Hollywood. And another one of those apocryphal stories is that Jack Warner was being driven past the line of people waiting to go in to see it and asked, what picture are they showing there? And someone said, it's that three-dimensional picture. And Jack Warner said, we need that.
Hey.
And
Did he say it like, we need that?
Probably, yeah.
We need that, kid. Take a memo.
And
You're always taking a memo back
And
then.
Warner Brothers fast-tracked House of Wax into production.
That's okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The whole reason people ask, so why 3D? So this is after World War II. People come back. We're having this boom, and in the 1950s, you have people watching television. Oh my gosh, television! And the whole idea for 3D is, hey, we're losing these people to television. How do I get them back into
Leave your home.
Leave your
Right,
yes.
right.
Get butts in the seats.
And so this was basically a gimmick. It's like, look, things are going to be jumping out at you.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the earlier pictures were being promoted that way.
Yeah.
The posters always showed like some character coming out on the screen.
Buona Devil's promotional tag was, there'll be a lion in your lap.
And there was also something about a girl, too, right?
But it definitely started. I mean, I was going to say it started.
Oh, yeah.
1953. I was looking at like what came out.
Well, no,
that year.
1953 was a banner year.
Oh my
for 3D.
God! We had The Maze, Robot Monster.
It came
from outer space. House of Wax, and of course, Catwoman of the Moon. But like all 1953, all 3D
And,
films.
let's not forget Robot Monster.
Okay, all right.
How can you possibly forget Robot Monster?
Listen. There are some great 3D films out there, and I know that you have a special attachment to Robot Monster.
I love Robot Monster.
So for listeners, Robot Monster. It's a
a monster.
Cheap,
He's a robot.
Eric, it is a cheap 3D film. It is. You have. Well, the story is. This
Yeah.
Alien tries to take over the world. There's been an apocalypse, right?
They've killed all of humanity
Yeah, all
except
of
for this one
Except
family.
for George Nader.
Yeah.
Right.
And the monster is a giant gorilla outfit with
Not a giant gorilla
Well, okay,
outfit.
just a
A
big
gorilla costume.
a hefty dude, and there's a spaceman helmet on him. Okay?
Yeah, well, okay, it was an independently produced film.
Uh-huh.
And Phil Tucker, the producer, they had a rather low budget for this.
Low budget's like an understatement.
So
Bubble machines
they-
cost money.
Bubble Machine and
Bubble
Bronson
machines cost
Canyon.
money.
Gorilla outfits cost money.
They went to Western Costume Rentals
Yeah.
and rented a space helmet.
Okay.
So so they didn't make it. It was rented.
It was a rent. Yes, and
They had to have it back by the end of the week.
well, you can actually.
You want- All right, we need a space helmet. Maybe we should make one. No,
You can
fuck
see
it.
that. You can see that same helmet in several other movies from the period.
Can you really?
Oh, really? Like
in
what?
slightly different configurations. There was one movie I forget the title, but they're wearing
Robot creature?
They're wearing the helmet, but it's backwards.
Yeah.
So that the capsules are on the front.
Oh my god.
Okay, but yeah, but for listeners, look,
That was Monster Robot.
And then they hired George Barrows to play the monster.
Okay.
And George was one of the great Hollywood gorilla men.
right.
Okay.
He had his own gorilla suit.
Oh, he had.
So the idea was, okay, let's hire a guy with a monster costume and we'll put a space helmet on him.
Right.
I thought it was a situation maybe they're going to do a gorilla thing, and he was one of these hard-ass guys who went, all right, I'll give you the suit for this amount of money, but if you want the head, that's an extra 1,000.
Yeah.
You know, and a way to trick them into it.
Okay, speaking of trick, now Eric, this is another thing that kind of irritates me. Okay, so no, with the posters, it's like let's make it really fascinating to get people in. When you look at the poster shows this hairy body of this monster holding this woman in the helmet. In the helmet, you see a skull, a scary skull, and also there looks like a giant dinosaur monster that looks very similar to the beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
The Rhedosaur.
The Rhedosaur. I'm just saying, it looks kind of... And when I started to watch this, I'm waiting for that moment when I see the skull inside the helmet. And
Which came first, the poster or the movie? I'm guessing the poster.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Maybe around the same time.
I
maybe.
think the skull on the poster is just an embellishment to
Yeah, I think so.
kind of make it a little
yeah,
more
classic
exciting.
ballyhoo.
Would've made
No, but there are dinosaurs in the movie.
Well, yeah. There's
Well,
iguanas.
Yeah.
In a small.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
stock footage.
Yeah.
But you know, the funny thing, Eric, is when I saw the film for the first time, it was on television. I had no idea it had been shot in 3D originally. And I remember being irritated. Why the bubbles? What bubble machine? Now it makes sense. Now I understand. So they're shooting this film in 3D. And they go, we got to have some kind of 3D effect. Bubbles, of course.
You will have a bubble in your lap.
And,
wasn't
and
it
you'll
like-
note the billion bubble machine actually gets a credit.
I was going to say, it's actually created like the
Yeah,
bubble
yeah.
machine. Wow.
How sad is that?
No, I can't confirm this, but I've heard that it may be the same bubble machine that was used on the Lawrence Welk show.
Celebrity bubble machine.
Maybe.
Okay, so we look before.
I don't know that for sure.
That bubble machine was at the Hollywood Collectors Show. I paid $35 for an autograph.
Now, before we start spraying rumors, you're saying that you cannot confirm this.
It's a nice myth
There's
to believe
not
in.
a whole there's not a whole lot of
Bubble machine.
production reports to look at from the time.
Right,
but
right.
yeah, there
So, but as cheesy and low budget as that movie was that a relative hit at the time because of the 3D?
I don't know that it did all that well.
like would have done
Now,
any better?
I
for just
should say
2D?
though, the 3D in it was shot really well.
Okay.
Okay.
The movie looks great and it's
Looks great.
yeah.
I have
And it's actually it's got a couple of my favorite lines from like any movie.
Sure.
Go.
There's a moment where the little boy from the family, and I should say it's meant to be kind of a kid's film because the whole thing is like a kid's dream.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's,
yeah.
it's kind of bleak though too at the same time.
Oh yeah, well,
The very
well,
depressed kid.
yeah. The premise is the Earth has been taken over, humanity's been destroyed. This one surviving family is living in the ruins of the city.
Happy birthday, Timmy.
And okay, talk about the low budget.
Yeah.
For the ruins, for the sets.
Yeah.
They actually went out to Chavez Ravine.
Uh-huh.
This was before Dodger Stadium had been built. But after they evicted all the people that lived there,
Oh my god!
there was this period in the 50s where the homes had been torn down, but nothing else had been built, and they shot all the ruins
Oh
in the ruins of.
That's smart.
Yeah.
And then for all the scenes of Robot Monster in his
course, the
lair,
famous-
it's Bronson Cave.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Very famous.
You know, that movie, I know it sounds ridiculous if you haven't seen it, and it is ridiculous. But even as a kid watching that for the first time, it was so ridiculous
Oh yeah.
that I
Well,
was captivated.
It's kind of
by it.
surreal. And it's-
Yeah.
the movie takes itself very seriously.
Yes,
Right.
it does.
You know, and you've got this gorilla wearing a space helmet delivering what's almost a Shakespearean soliloquy. You know, because
Where's that Broadway play?
he's been ordered to destroy this last remaining family of people, but he's fallen in love with the human daughter.
Oh, it's not going to work.
And he has this soliloquy where he says, you know, I must, but I cannot. Or where on the graph do must and cannot intersect. You know,
That's a classic.
Sir Ian McKellen is Robot Monster.
Okay. Well, that's.
But like you had on that spectrum, you had that side of the spectrum, the really low budget independent movies. But then you had movies like House of Wax and The
Oh,
Maze,
yeah,
which
yeah,
are
yeah.
big,
Well, let's-
big studio productions.
Hey, wait, but before we move on, though, can I just found the tagline for Buona Devil.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it is great. The miracle of the age. A lion in your lap, you're right. A lover in your arms.
Hey.
Now, I've seen Buona Devil, and that didn't happen. Unless you're, doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Don't
well,
believe everything you read in movie
That's
ads.
true. That's true.
Okay.
Right.
Well. Okay. So that, like you were saying, so that's one side of 3D.
Right, but, I mean,
low
but the
budget.
gates had been open now.
Oh, yeah.
and,
Well, yeah. Like I said, Jack Warner saw Buona Devil's
I want a script on my
numbers,
desk tomorrow morning.
and they rushed to get something out.
Oh,
Right,
so
right.
let's talk about House of Wax. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of and
Yeah.
the beautiful
I love that
thing.
movie.
The thing about it is, this is beautiful color.
Oh,
it's
yeah, yeah.
color.
Well, Buona Devil was color too,
Yeah.
but it wasn't good color.
No,
Right, right.
no, it wasn't. And there is an interesting fact about
It's
House of
Buona
Wax
color.
that Buona color. Yes. Now, of course, it stars the
Buonavision.
fabulous Vincent Price.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
the interesting thing is,
Well,
the
and you know, it was House of Wax that made Vincent Price a horror guy.
That's true. No, you're right though. He had been in some like semi-villainous roles before that, but
Oh,
it
he
was
had done a
House of
bunch of
Wax.
stuff.
He was
Yeah.
edging toward
He'd
it.
been-
though.
Yeah, yeah.
He'd been doing,
but that no, yes,
he'd
but
been
that,
doing
like,
costume drama.
Yeah,
prior
but that
to this.
solidified him as like a horror star.
So,
Really.
so and a lot of people say that this is probably one of his greatest roles, but also the director. There's an interesting story about the director. Here you have a 3D film, and the director was Andre de Toth,
Yeah, Andre de Toth.
who only had
One eye.
one eye.
he never knew he was making a 3D movie.
No, Sean. No, Sean. He did. Now, Eric, maybe you can, confirm this. Now, my understanding is he knew what 3D is. And so he relied on his DP, and he said, "This is what I want," and he couldn't see it, but he basically said, "This is kind of what I'm looking
But
for."
how did they end up
Well, yeah,
choosing
yeah.
him though? Like it's just
yeah,
That's
interesting,
a very
like-
good question. Yeah.
Easy, Jack Warner. Let's get the guy with the one eye. Yeah.
Like,
Well, they hired him on his reputation as a director, and
Whatever.
he understood composition.
right, right.
But I had mentioned Lothrop Worth earlier as one of the guys who designed the Natural Vision rig.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers went to the same company, Natural Vision, and hired them. In fact, they contracted to make like 5 more of these camera rigs for Warner Brothers.
Wow.
And if you look in the credits, you'll see that the Natural Vision guy was Lothrop Worth.
Oh, okay.
So it was Lothrop Worth on the set.
So having an
doing-
expert there.
Yeah, he was the guy there doing all the calculations, making
okay.
sure the 3D works.
Okay.
These days, they would call him the stereographer.
Yeah.
Okay. And in some ways I can see that because like if you watch House of Wax, it works so well just as a movie.
I was
You know,
about to say that,
It
too.
wasn't
Yeah,
like
I
a movie that
completely
a bad
agree.
movie that relied on a gimmick
No.
of 3D.
There's only some moments where you go, what's going
yes.
on here?
Like the paddle ball.
Yeah.
thing.
Well,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, let's talk about that because that's a great scene.
Right, but there's a reason for that, right?
There is a reason
Yeah.
for that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things about these 3D features in the 50s, they had to have an intermission. And that's because most theaters had 2 projectors in their booth. And for a regular 2D movie, they would put reel 1 on one projector, reel 2 on the next. And when it was time to change reels, they'd do a changeover.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, for a 3D movie, both projectors had to be showing reel 1, the left and the right.
Right.
All right.
So you had to have some break in there where the projectionist could take off reel 1 and put on reel 2.
Right.
So they ended up building intermissions into the 3D movies in the 1950s.
Okay.
Wow.
And then they would deliver the left and right prints of the film on these massive reels so that they could get through, like
half the movie.
Yeah,
two-thirds of the movie before they'd have to change it.
Okay.
Right.
And so they wanted to come up with something interesting after the intermission to bring the audience back into the story.
Right.
Okay.
So they came up with the break in House of Wax comes at a point when you come back into the theater, it's the opening of the new House of
The
Wax
new
museum.
wax museum is being
Right.
opened.
Ladies and
Yes.
gentlemen, come into
Yes.
the Wax
Yes.
Museum.
Yeah,
And-
so they saw this as, okay, well, we'll announce the hoopla of the Wax Museum opening as our audience comes back into the theater
That's cool.
That's
great.
good.
with
Yeah.
this whole sequence. And it's really the only time in the movie where it acknowledges all of these off-screen things that it can do.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a guy like in the lobby,
And
whatever.
this
He's
guy
got a paddle ball,
and it's
he's
a
like,
famous. This
dude,
guy is
right.
famous, and so what it is for listeners, you haven't seen it. There's at the opening, this guy has it's like a little wooden paddle, and he's whacking this little ball that's going straight out to.
It's on
straight-
elastic.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure every
And-
time you
and
go,
he has
every
one,
toy store has
yes,
them.
He has.
Right.
Then he does a second paddle, and there's a third paddle, and it's
Right.
it's so great.
He's really good.
And
yeah.
what's so cool, Eric, is the last time I saw this at a 3D film festival, at that sequence when it was completed, the whole audience just applauded because
Oh,
it
yeah.
was such
Well-
a great moment.
Well, it's also, he breaks the fourth wall and he talks
he
Right.
to the movie
That's
audience.
true.
Yes.
He makes comments about how he's going to
What?
hit the popcorn.
yeah, he says, "Watch out for that bag of popcorn."
Yeah.
I thought it was something more personal. Like,
No,
Hey,
no.
hey, Charlie, put that down.
No, but it's a really exciting moment, and I remember just sitting in the audience, just seeing that little ball, looking like it's coming right at me.
Yeah, and that whole sequence, it really doesn't have anything to do with the plot of the movie.
Right,
it's
right.
just there as a, hey, we're bringing you back in from the intermission. We're going to show you a little spectacle.
That's
Yeah.
really
That's
inspired,
cool.
though.
Yeah,
But it's
it is.
fun. It's lots
Yeah.
of fun.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
and-
I think that movie is great. And I really do think that it transcends just being a 3D gimmick. It's a great
Yeah, it's a
story. It's a
great movie.
remake.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, I mean, my favorite moment in House of Wax comes in that last reel, and it's not even an off-screen effect. It's sort of the opposite. Charles Bronson is in the movie.
Right.
Oh, yes,
he was
he
billed
is.
as Charles Baczynski at the time.
That's right.
As Igor.
He's
the mute.
He's the mute. Yeah. And
I'm a mute.
No, he doesn't say I'm a mute. He just kind of grunts.
I'm a mute.
No,
You punks.
Punks.
no, he doesn't talk in the film.
No, I know.
But anyway, Eric.
well,
you're saying-
there's this great moment where one of the hero characters has gone into the wax museum looking for the girl,
yes.
and Charles Baczynski pops up like right in front of you,
Yeah.
and runs into the screen.
Right.
And like the first time I saw this movie in 3D, it looked like someone in the front row just ran into the movie.
Charles Bronson is chasing me.
They should have put that in Death Wish. Don't they?
Yeah, really.
You know what? For me, was actually at the beginning. For me, the first time I was aware of the 3D is when Vincent Price's agent Buddy sets the museum on fire.
Oh, yeah.
And what
The-
happens?
the
And what,
fire
and
scene is
what
spectacular.
happens? What
Yeah,
happens
yeah.
is you have fire in the foreground, fire in the background, and in the center there's a wax figure melting. And
Oh,
as
yeah,
the
yeah.
head
Yeah, it's
melts,
very grotesque.
to me it felt
Marie
like
Antoinette? Is that
yeah.
what that-
Well,
yeah.
no, and there were other. Actually,
yeah.
Marie Antoinette doesn't get as bad as some of these other figures,
okay.
and it almost looks like a wax head falls into your lap.
Yeah, it's
and
pretty
so,
cool.
so to me, when I
Such a
saw it
great
the first
movie.
time, well, that whole wax burning scene did it for me. That was fantastic.
One of the things, though, with that movie and we've seen various versions of this over the years, but the idea that, you got Vincent Price, who in the story is supposedly wearing a wax, mask.
Oh,
Yeah.
spoiler alert! Oh man!
Come
Oh,
on.
come
Come
on!
on.
No, it's not
But he's
good.
wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And can you imagine wearing a wax mask through like 17 hours of your day?
Well, it's like soft wax, perhaps. And
really?
Also,
Let me put some soft wax
There's
on
a little
you.
bit of
And, okay, here's some-
disbelief you have to go.
No, no,
with.
no.
I mean, of course I go
Okay,
along
no, no,
with
no,
it.
I'm gonna-
Because in real life, you'd be like,
As a kid, though, I went, well, wait a minute, that must have been really horrible because I put on a rubber mask for 10 minutes and I'm,
Well, yeah, and remember, this character is horribly burned and disfigured under that wax mask. too.
Right.
yeah.
See, I looked at it.
chafing.
I looked at it as look. I don't know. I can't speak for James here, but what I can say is, I thought that because he was so advanced in the ways of wax, he had invented a special kind of wax
wizard.
It was like wax, rubbery wax. That's how I. That's James.
Okay, I'll go.
Sure,
with
I'll buy that.
Thanks, James.
that. But it's one of those things you just go with. You know,
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
it's
and
fine.
and House of Wax proved to be like a huge hit.
No,
for
it's
Warner
great.
Brothers.
I love it.
No,
I
it's
love
a great
it.
movie. But I mean,
so much so that Columbia hired Vincent Price to make The Mad Magician and basically recycled it.
it's totally
yeah.
like a House of Wax ripoff.
But
really.
see, here's the thing: a lot of people don't know about the Mad Magician as much. House of Wax is like the one that everyone knows.
Yeah.
But the Mad Magician is a lot of fun.
That's a fun movie too. Yeah.
Well, see, Columbia and Warner Brothers were in kind of a 3D race at the time.
oh, really?
Warner Brothers, they fast-tracked House of Wax. They wanted to be the first studio to have a 3D picture.
Right.
Because Buona Devil had been independent. And Columbia actually beat them to it by 4 days. Columbia, sort of on the cheap, made a movie called Man in the Dark. That's a film noir about a gangster who loses his memory.
Now that I don't know.
wow.
I don't know that one.
It was 3D.
Yeah, yeah. This gangster loses his memory in an experiment where they're trying to like remove the criminal intent from his mind. And the rest of his gang,
Clockwork Orange.
the rest of his gang wants to know where he stashed the money, and he doesn't even remember that he was a gangster.
That sounds good.
Yeah, cool.
It's a very much a B movie,
Yeah, film
Sure.
noir, right.
but it's kind of fun.
Does it have
And
like 3D, cool 3D effects or something? Like
is-
the paddle guy?
like,
or
it has
Here's the money right here.
Yeah, the memory.
it actually does have some moments at the beginning where the doctors are like
prodding him.
poking at the camera.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Oh.
That's like those Three Stooges shorts, like Spooks.
Oh, yeah.
Spooks.
Oh,
I love Spooks.
Yeah, the Three Stooges made 2 3D movies
Right,
in
yeah.
1950s.
I didn't know
Spooks
they made
and
that.
yeah.
Spooks and Pardon My Backfire.
Yeah, that's
Pardon my
right.
backfire.
Yeah, pardon my backfire.
No, don't do, Stooges, come on, don't do fart jokes.
I was going to say, is it a fart thing, James?
It sounds like it.
Once again, James, thanks for being here to the show.
Yeah, those were also done at Columbia.
But what
yeah,
makes
the
us great
Stooges were doing
because
their
they go
shorts there.
all out.
They're
They're
shameless.
blatant about it.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
If you're going to poke the audience in the eye, who better to do it
Of
than
course,
Mo?
Mo.
right?
Yeah, of course.
So, see, I haven't
But the
seen...
hypodermic needle.
Oh,
that
yeah,
thing
yeah.
is-
Yeah.
Well,
So
okay.
Mo actually sticks his fingers
Yes.
out at the lens?
Yes.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can get your eyes poked out.
See, I have not seen this
a Mo
one.
in your lap.
so
You are the
And-
ignoramus.
So it's the two films. Pardon My Backfire. The boys are working in an auto garage,
Right, of
and
course.
and get mixed up with some gangsters who bring in their car to get it fixed.
And there's shenanigans.
And there's shenanigans with like oil cans and
right,
All right,
right.
yeah.
and spray hoses and flames. And
Not as good as hypodermics, though, man.
but yeah, their better film, in my opinion, is Spooks.
Yeah.
Where
Okay,
the
Spooks.
boys are detectives, and they're sent to a haunted house to find this girl who's gone missing.
It's got
And
everything.
She's
gorilla.
been kidnapped by a mad scientist who wants to transplant her brain into a gorilla's body.
Of course.
Oh, yeah. That's
And
good work.
It's
sure.
got this. Well, first the gorilla suit is great. It's got this pie fight at gorilla throwing pies at the camera at the end.
That's right. Yeah,
You
yeah.
are kidding.
the
but there's-
epitome of cinema.
But there's also I'll show it to you. There's also this
so good.
There's also this really great moment in the middle of the film where this bat flies right at the camera.
Yes!
And
yeah.
then they cut to a close up and the bat has Shemp's head.
I remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Now there's actually interesting side tangent
a
I
good
can go off
movie.
on here. The Three Stooges have a very interesting connection to 3D comic books as well.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Mo Howard's son-in-law invented 3D comic books.
Wow.
What? Wow.
This is also in 1953. There was a comic book artist, Joe Kubert,
Sure, yeah.
and
One of the greats.
and his partner in comics was Norman Maurer, and he was Mo's son-in-law.
Okay.
Wow.
And Norman and his brother Leonard were kind of coming up with these ideas of like what we can do to make a three-dimensional comic book, and came up with this process they called Illustereo.
Wow.
And they started shopping this around to comic book companies, and a publisher called St. John's Publications decided to license this technique from them. And the first comic book that they worked on was a Three Stooges comic book.
Makes sense.
It wasn't the first one published. The first one
Right.
published was actually Mighty Mouse.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
They licensed that from Paul Terry, but the second one was the Three Stooges.
Wow, cool.
So in 1953, you could get Three Stooges 3D movies and Three Stooges 3D comic books.
paradise.
So these comics
awesome.
must be pretty hard to find now,
Yeah.
right?
The Howards
not
get things
necessarily,
done.
not necessarily, because they published a lot of these comic books in '53. So if you look online, you can usually find the more common ones. So the Mighty Mouse and Three Stooges, they're out there.
That's awesome. So I'd like to ask about another movie from that same year, 53. And this is a Canadian production, I believe. I think it was a Canadian production, and that was The Mask.
Oh, yeah.
The Mask was actually that wasn't in the '50s wave. That was a little bit later.
Oh, right, that was like 61.
It was
right?
Oh, wow. You're
okay.
you're like passing the 50s, Sean.
We'll get to everything.
I was getting. I
But
guess I was
that's-
getting The Maze and The Mask mixed.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. The maze was in 1950s.
You know,
Right.
and we talked about the maze on one of our Horror Obscura shows, but it definitely needs a place here, because my understanding is this was also another lower budget film, the maze.
Yes.
and directed by
William Cameron Menzies.
Yeah, William
Right.
Cameron Menzies directed.
And like we had mentioned, like the sets aren't that elaborate. But
it wasn't
maze,
really. It was
no,
still a fairly classy looking production.
and
I
Richard
thought.
Carlson is just terrific.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Well, Richard Carlson is a really underrated actor.
agreed.
He would agree with that
Did
if he was alive.
did several 3D movies.
It came from outer space.
Came from outer
from
space.
Black
Creature from the
Lagoon.
Black Lagoon, The Maze.
Little known fact: 2D in real life. Richard Carlson. Yeah. No, flat as a pancake. Yep.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, no. The Maze is a really cool sort of gothic
Yeah.
thing until you get to the monster.
Yeah.
Let's
I
not,
won't
come
say
on,
I
let's
won't
not
say what it is, but
please.
the maze is actually just available now on 3D Blu-ray,
Yes,
so
yeah, 'cause
people can get
it's-
that and watch it.
I
It
watched
hasn't been
it.
unavailable for a long time, right?
Yeah,
It finally
well,
was out.
there were 50 3D pictures made during that period from the end of '52 to 1954.
50?
Yeah.
That many movies?
From Wanted
Wow.
Devil to the last one that was released in that cycle
Oh my
was Revenge of
gosh.
the Creature.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
It came out in '55.
But the maze.
For the longest time, you couldn't see any of them anywhere.
Right.
There were several of the Universal pictures had gotten re-releases in the '70s and had been converted into red and blue anaglyph. So those kind of survived. And I
Right.
know when I was a kid, I got to see Creature from the Black
Right. The
Lagoon.
bigger high profile
that way.
ones. Right.
And then in the '80s, some of these were revamped and they attempted to show them on TV in
right.
3D.
Right.
But for the most part, these 1950s movies, there really wasn't any practical way to see them
Right.
until 3D Blu-rays came along.
Right. Now with 3D systems and Blu-rays, they can these remastered.
So
classic.
so there's most of them are unavailable, but there are quite a few now that you can get to see at home.
But considering that The Maze was a 3D movie, I watched this on YouTube because that was the only place I could find it at Larry Stroth's urging.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed it, and I felt like it was pretty solid. Yeah, it's low budget, and yeah, we could talk about the monster another time.
But it's very atmospheric.
But it's very
and
atmospheric, and it's a really solid story. Like I
Right.
really I have to say, I did not see that ending coming.
Yeah, and
Right.
let us not say, because that's
I
the
won't,
big
I won't,
surprise,
I won't.
that there's this moment towards the end where something happens and the audience just screamed. I saw this, when I saw The Maze for the first time, it was at a 3D film festival here in Hollywood, Eric. And I didn't know about The Maze. I knew Richard Carlson was in it. That's all I knew. And so when I went to see it, I was just blown away, and there was this moment when something happens and the whole audience screamed. I was so excited, and I said, if this ever came back, I want to take my daughter to see it, which 3 years later, they brought it back, and they showed The Maze again, and I had to take my daughter, and we both just had the time of our lives, and it was just, it was a packed house, and again, not a well-known 3D film, but
sure.
still a lot of fun.
I
Well,
agree.
and among 3D film buffs, that's one that always comes up as, what do you want for your collection? Everybody
right.
loves The Maze.
Right.
I've seen a preview, or not a preview, but it's like a trailer where it's actually Richard Carlson talking
to the audience.
Talking to them.
Yeah.
It's about trying to explain
Yeah.
what 3D is, and he actually takes his hand and he says it's like leaping out at you, and he kind of puts his hand out and
He does jazz hands? Because that's what you just did.
No, this is jazz hands.
Oh,
this
no,
is-
you're right.
No, he
That is
reaches
jazz
out.
hands.
He reaches out like this.
That's,
it's like
Catwoman.
grab. It's like grab you, kind of a thing.
Well, he
no,
had to explain 3D a lot, didn't he? There was a number of trailers like
Well,
that.
there
Yeah.
were a number of 3D explanation films. Before Buona Devil, there was a short that the Natural Vision Company produced
Right.
to explain 3D that featured Beanie and Cecil.
Oh, wow.
That's really kind of cute. It's Beanie explaining to Cecil, the C6 sea serpent, what 3D is.
And these are little puppets.
They're puppets.
Puppets,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
For
and
listeners.
and
It's like when the 3D comes at you, duck and cover.
Cecil goes off screen and comes back in with like stacks of 3D glasses on his face.
He
and-
never got it.
And then they cut to like an eye doctor explaining how 3D works to like a Miss America contestant or something.
Okay, a little something for the dads
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Okay, good.
That's awesome.
Okay, so there's The Maze, but I also want to mention, to me, one of my favorites is It Came From Outer Space.
Oh, sure, sure.
I mean, to me,
I agree.
Yeah.
That is probably one of my single favorite 3D films of all time.
3D
Yeah,
film, and
yeah.
I think part of the reason, Matt, is from the very beginning, if you get a chance to see it in real 3D, from the very moment it starts, you see this satellite or this thing or shooting through the
Meteor or
space.
something, yeah.
You don't know what
and,
it is,
And,
yeah.
and it goes from right to left, and all of a sudden it starts shooting straight towards you and explodes. And it's so exciting. I mean, right from the get-go. Then, dun, dun, dun.
It gets your
came from
attention.
outer- And it got my gives me chills just talking about it.
No.
But
really great 3D.
Oh, sure.
but
yeah,
not-
well, it was Universal's first foray into 3D.
Jack Arnold directed this.
Jack
Right.
Arnold directed.
And he did an amazing job because he also, to me, he did things that were subtle, some things that were straight on.
Well, yeah, some things that worked for the story, but then also were
they weren't
great for
just
3D.
gags.
And
Yeah.
I'll tell you one, for example. Okay, so this really grabs your attention. Then it starts. You hear Mr. Putnam explaining this is our town, and you start seeing shots of the town. And then he's with his girlfriend. They're in the house, and they're talking by the fire. And you see it's.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You have to kind of go through the fire. It's a 3D thing where you can see them through the fire, which is you're in one room, and then you see them through the distance. But then they go outside where his telescope
Yeah,
is,
and the telescope is fantastic.
And what
Yes,
he does
yeah,
is
yeah,
for,
yeah.
for people who don't get this is so cool. The telescope is angled towards the right, and what he does, it's a simple thing. He's talking to Barbara Rush. Let's see what the stars have to say, and he turns
Yeah.
the telescope, and immediately it's like pointing right at you.
Such a simple effect.
And-
But also like the creature, alien. When he's
with his
a big eye. I mean,
eye.
but it's like it's even in a regular movie, it's great. But like singing like that,
It came from outer space. It's the only 3D movie that I can remember where when those rocks are flying out at you,
Yeah.
that it managed to activate my deflect
Yes.
mode.
Yes,
you know?
right.
so-
you actually,
Yeah.
you actually flinch.
So Richard Carlson, what he and Barbara Rush see, they see a meteor land, and it makes this big explosion. Well, they decide to go and check it out, and he goes down into the crater, and he thinks he sees a spaceship, and then at that moment, there's this closed door, and then these rocks come down, and he starts to climb back up, and that's where the rocks start coming down. Matt, and I agree with you. There's a couple rocks that kind of fly up, and
the way they fly off is like they timed it in just a way where you didn't expect it.
No,
at
and
all.
it looks like it hits someone in the front row, and it bends. And I did like what you did. I actually flinched.
Yeah, I flinched. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of great simple things in this film.
It's so great.
It's a great movie.
So I love this film.
It's a story by Ray Bradbury.
Yes,
Right.
yes. Who basically, it's funny. When he wrote it, and he kind of did the screenplay. My story. It was handed to Harry Essex, and he said to Ray Bradbury, "Wow, this is the easiest job I've had to do to translate your story into a script." Because Bradbury had all this wonderful stuff in there, all this poetry stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's disputes about how much of it's Bradbury and how much of it's
Oh,
Essex.
I think a lot.
But when you listen to that dialogue, it's pretty clearly Bradbury.
Yeah,
Right.
When the guy up on the telephone pole says, sometimes you see and hear a lot of things like the wind humming through the wires
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it listens and
Or like
listens.
the heat. When the guy's talking about the heat when it gets 96 degrees, people get irritable.
I mean, this is stuff that
Yeah.
I mean, it's Bradbury, but still,
It's great.
Well,
movie,
and at that point, Bradbury hadn't done a screenplay.
Yeah, he couldn't get. There's like union rules or something.
So they didn't hire him to write the screenplay, but they did hire him to write a story. And what I've heard is he basically wrote something that was so big and descriptive that
Right.
it was all
lends
there.
itself
But still,
well,
the
yeah.
great thing is you have a wonderful job by Jack Arnold. You have a great little cast.
Oh,
you
yeah,
have you have this
a big studio,
wonderful
too. I mean,
this
it's-
wonderful dialogue. You put it all together. It's really a terrific 3D
And
film.
top it off with a story about sympathetic aliens,
which is
True,
something
true.
which was you didn't see a lot of that.
Yeah. not
there's a
much.
lot of mystery about it, and where it ends. You're absolutely right. We think of aliens as at that time, 50s. It came. It's like ooh, I married a monster from outer
they're coming
space.
to-
Or coming
yeah,
to attack you.
conquer us.
War of the Worlds. This is different. And
Oh
it's-
yeah. They crashed here accidentally, and they just want to leave.
yeah,
Right, right.
yeah.
Yeah,
don't
it's really
blame 'em.
great.
No. But anyway, so if listeners, if you ever get a chance to see It Came from Outer Space in a real 3D, that's something I would recommend.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I actually have a theory that J.J. Abrams pretty much ripped that off for Super 8.
Well, don't. Yeah. Well.
I would
You're
say,
not going to get an argument
I would
from
say
me.
Super 8 is a ripoff of several different things. Yeah.
What if we said none of it's original?
You can go plot point in there, and it's
Yeah,
all in. It came
Oh
from
yeah,
outer
that
space.
and
Doesn't
half a
surprise
dozen
me
Spielberg
from
movies.
a moment.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to jump off here. I don't want to.
Let's say it's an homage.
Okay, an homage. Look, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we did dedicate a whole show, but Jack Arnold did do another great film, classic 3D, Creature from the Black Lagoon. This is 1954.
Jack Arnold actually did 2 more 3D pictures.
Yeah. So, but Creature from the Black Lagoon,
Yeah.
and we did a whole Creature from the Black Lagoon show with David Scow and Bobby Slayton. It's a terrific
yeah.
episode. But the
that's
thing
another one where like the movie itself stands up so well just as a movie.
Sure.
The thing that is so amazing about it is a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, it's 3D. You got the camera, above ground. Creature of the Black Lagoon, they actually have a 3D camera in the water.
Underwater,
And what
yes.
makes the film so great is when you're filming in 3D and you can actually see the particles floating in front of you as the creature's swimming in the distance.
Had that been done before?
Underwater 3D?
Yeah.
No. That was the first picture to have underwater.
Is that
3D.
Really?
Yeah.
And it
Wow.
was just spectacular. Just
It
absolutely
really is.
awesome.
Yeah. It's-
And if you guys want to hear more information, just check out our Creature from the Black Lagoon episode.
And
Totally.
and Creature came rather late in the 3D cycle. It didn't come out until 1954.
Right, 'cause you had, like,
so
you had other
3D
ones.
was kind of waning by that point.
But like you had like Gorilla at Large, which is like a
Yeah,
crazy, fun, colorful.
Oh yeah,
you know-
Gorilla at Large at Fox. It's actually, there were several 3D movies that had gorillas in them.
Of course, it just fit.
If we
well.
look at George Barrows in Robot Monster, you could kind of say it's a gorilla with a space helmet, right?
Three Stooges.
And then the Three Stooges had a gorilla, and then Gorilla at Large, and it's George Barrows again.
right.
So it's the same suit.
I love
No,
that.
is it?
Is it really?
But he's got a
Oh,
head.
wow.
He's
Yeah.
got the gorilla head.
It's the
but
con-
it's
They
it's
paid him the
con-
extra grand.
but
It's the conga. It's the conga head. It looks like.
I don't think it was a grand. I think it was like $50, Matt. They didn't have the extra $50 for
It was-
Robot
well,
Monster.
and then-
Back then. it was-
Yeah.
Phantom of the Rue Morgue has a gorilla
That's
as
right,
well.
Phantom
That's
of the
right.
Reward.
Yeah. Gorillas and 3D just
Yeah,
go
yeah.
together. Like,
But
like peanut butter and jelly.
Oh, now I want peanut butter and jelly. Gorilla at Large, though, considering that it has all the trappings of a B horror movie.
But yeah,
But that cast.
Oh my God.
My
Oh,
God.
yeah.
Cameron Mitchell, Anne Bancroft, Lee J. Cobb.
yeah, Raymond Burr. Yeah, it's a fun movie.
And,
And he had the girl like swinging a vine towards the camera. It's
I
like,
want to go there. No, it's like part
You
of
know,
the
they set it in a circus. And
Yeah,
they've got,
it's-
trapeze performers.
yes, it's great.
So there's a lot of fun 3D that they do with it.
Sure.
Totally,
And the
totally.
color in that
Yeah,
movie.
it's great.
Now, the interesting thing is Gorilla at Large was at Fox, and it was one of only 2 pictures that Fox released in 3D because Fox really never got behind it.
we don't like
Throughout
gorillas.
the 50s, no, throughout the 50s, there was an ongoing war between Warner Brothers and Fox. And Warner Brothers was a strong proponent of 3D. At Fox, they were all about CinemaScope.
Okay.
Oh, and CinemaScope is the big. It's where it's like it's a giant. It's like a big lens.
Yeah.
It would have been called
it's-
Gorilla at Wide.
Yeah, they use an anamorphic lens to shoot that does a 2-to-1 compression of the picture, and then an anamorphic lens to project that stretches
Right.
it back out. So you could have a movie that's like twice as wide as a normal movie was at the time.
All you need is the lens.
And again, this was all stuff that the studios were trying to get people back to the theaters.
Right,
You know,
right.
your TV is square. Come see a wide movie.
Right.
Come see a 3D movie. Come see Cinerama that was actually 3 projectors on 3 panels.
Lee J. Cobb.
So
Come see Lee J. Cobb in 3D.
so
Cobb in
so-
your lap.
But 20th Century Fox did delve into 3D for Gorilla at Large, and they also released a movie called Inferno that's really, really good.
No, I don't know that
It's like
one.
a crime drama. A crime drama.
Yeah. Inferno is also sort of a noirish story.
Okay.
Is there a gorilla?
No gorilla.
Oh, forget it.
Never mind.
Forget it.
Rhonda Fleming in color.
You got me in 3D.
Hey.
I'm back.
Yeah, it's the story of this wealthy LA businessman who goes out into the desert to go horseback riding with his wife and their horseback trainer. He falls from the horse, breaks his leg, and his wife and the trainer see this as an opportunity. They've been having an affair to leave him in the desert to die so she can have his money.
Oh wow, cool.
So they go back to LA and leave him there. What they don't count on is that he kind of figures out how to survive.
Wow, this
And
sounds great.
A lot of this movie is just like his internal thoughts while he's trying to remember, like, how do you get water from a cactus? And
Oh, this actually
And-
sounds really cool.
Yeah, it does.
and then when several days have gone by and his body hasn't been recovered from where they left him, they realize, oh, we need to go back out, find him, and actually kill him. So it's a really good movie. It is available on 3D Blu-ray.
Okay, so and the 3D effects, does it have like stuff that's like
It's-
coming at you kind of a thing?
It actually doesn't really have any coming at you effects.
Okay.
But they've used the 3D to create, there's this vast desert
Okay.
that he's out there in. And they make you feel the expanse of just like how alone he is out there.
Sure.
So it actually makes you feel really claustrophobic.
Really?
It's really, really well done.
I want to see this.
Now there is some stuff at the end. The title Inferno refers to a big fire sequence toward the end of the movie.
How does the
And-
desert catch fire?
No, it's a prospector's cabin.
Oh.
And so there's this fire sequence and a fight scene.
Okay.
And some things get thrown at the camera. And I think they also
Guy with a ping pong paddle. Yeah.
no ping pong paddle, but there's some some stuff out in the desert with
Okay.
rocks and snakes and stuff. So
Rocks and snakes.
I like it.
Okay,
I'm,
all right.
I'm in.
Okay, so this, it sounds like this one, it's a neat story. The 3D is subtle. Okay, there's a big film done by a big director that I thought the 3D was subtle, and sometimes I wonder why even bother go through 3D. I'm talking about Alfred Hitchcock's
Right.
Dial M for Murder from 1954.
Sure. Well, Dial M for Murder was based on a stage play, and Hitchcock shot it very much as
Right.
a stage play.
So why
it
why
takes place
even-
all in this one apartment.
Yeah.
Aside from the murder scene, but there are several moments in there.
Yes.
To
when
me-
when Grace Kelly reaches back with the scissors.
See,
Right.
So
That's the big moment.
So for the listeners, there's this married couple. She kind of cheated on him a little bit, so he's decided he's gonna kind of do her in, and through this process where he finds this guy to kind of do the murder for him, and things don't go well. There's a moment when Grace Kelly is attacked, and for me, the only 3D moment is when it's a famous scene. It's actually used in the poster where it appears as she's being strangled and she's reaching back, and you see her hand reach back, and that's like, oh, here's the 3D moment, and she grabs this pair of scissors, and for me, it's like, that's great, that was exciting, but it was like, that was the moment.
Well, that may be the only thing that noticeably comes off screen.
Yeah.
But if you look at the compositions throughout, Hitchcock's doing a lot with compositions because it's all blocked as a stage play.
Yeah.
So he's got characters who are crossing from upstage to downstage, while in the foreground there's a table with lined up liquor bottles.
Yes.
And it's all about the compositions.
Right.
Okay, I see that.
It's subtle, but it's like, but still a good movie, though.
I like that movie. Just, the movie is great.
Yeah.
But then on top of it, the 3D for me, I felt like what they were trying to do, what Hitchcock was trying to do, was put you into the middle of that tension. And that's what I got from it. And that's why when that scene at the end happens,
which we don't want to say.
I don't really want. Yeah, but it's so shocking.
Yeah.
Because you just been living this subtle nightmare for most of the film, and then this thing happens.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really a shock. I really love that movie. I agree with you. I think what he does with just very simple sets is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, there's a train of thought that people have where they think that, like, okay, 3D has to be used for spectacle.
Yes,
and
Right.
That's what I think.
And you get that a lot these days, where, like, 3D is being used for all the tentpole
Yeah.
Big
superhero
movies,
movies and so on. And I like to say that you can use 3D to really create an emotional connection with characters.
Yeah.
And it is more subtle. It's not the gimmick 3D,
Right.
but you can do some really remarkable emotional connection.
Well, my understanding, the thing with Hitchcock is he always wanted to be ahead of the game, ahead of the curve. That's why he got into television. He wanted to do a 3D film.
He experimented in all kinds of fields.
He did,
yeah.
and that I respect. And Matt, I will say, as a Hitchcock film, I do like the film. When I've watched it on television, I just felt like it almost didn't need to be in 3D.
You just thought that there should have been a canister of radioactive waste.
Yes,
or,
yes,
or fat.
Or let's say
that makes
no, at the beginning,
makes the murder happen.
At the beginning, if he did something where there was like a fire in the front, or like a knife coming at you, or something like that.
But that's not that. That would be a different type of movie.
For what it's worth, by the time that Dial M came out, there actually weren't that many theaters that were still showing 3D.
Right.
Okay.
So while it did get released in 3D, it wasn't shown in many places that way.
Okay.
And so we
And
just
speaking of like emotional connection, like when I saw Gog,
I
had an emotional connection with that robot because it was in 3D. It was like
I had an emotional
plunging at me.
connection
Now,
as well,
Sean,
which is how much longer is this going to go
Sean,
on?
for
I
our
love
listeners-
Gog.
I like to say 3D can be used for spectacle, but it can also be used for intimacy.
Speaking of Gog,
yeah.
Sean, for our listeners,
Well,
can you tell
Gog
us?
it's like a 1950s. It's like this underground laboratory, and there's some kind of like sabotage going on. All these scientists trying to figure out somebody's a traitor, and there's these cool robots, Gog and Magog, and they're cool robots. And
You would think them being named that
They're
kind of lead you to believe something might go wrong.
They're completely impractical robots.
Yes,
that's why I love them though.
People make fun of the Daleks. These things.
Who would win, Gog or a Dalek fighting?
Now that would be a good 3D movie, though.
Yes, it would.
Now, well, what about? Go ahead,
I
Sean.
was gonna say, like, you're right. As 3D was waning a bit by this time in the 50s, it seemed like in the 60s you got a little more experimentation and new ways to kind of like use this format, because like I mentioned, The Mask.
Yeah, you mentioned
because The Mask was a movie that is not completely all in 3D.
Right.
It's a real. I love this movie.
It's one of
It's just so
it's one of
cool.
my favorite movies.
It's a really trippy
bizarre,
movie.
strange movie
Yeah.
where there's this like ancient kind of tribal mask that when the wearer puts it on, you're transported to this other kind of dimension that's to their world, and that world is what's in 3D in the movie. So
And
there's
it is
sequences.
that
and
world is so
really
scary.
bizarre.
And whenever the character puts on their mask, everyone in the audience was handed a pair of 3D glasses in the shape of the magic mystic mask.
Really? Oh man, let's have one of
I
those.
have one with me.
Oh my god, we got to take. Oh my god,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
You're not
And-
getting out of here alive.
A voice in the movie would
Yes.
say, "Put on the mask."
now.
And
Yeah.
then everyone in the audience would hold up their magic mystic mask and
All right.
watch the
awesome.
next 8 minutes of
yeah.
of psychosis
And
on
then
the
it
screen.
was like
Yeah.
the mask would kind of cause you to kill people.
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
it's, but it's such
It
a
would-
cool movie.
So, Sean, not all of the film was 3D?
No, it was only when you put on this
Right.
mask that so sequences. But to me, that's an example of like kind of exploring other ways to kind of use that format. You know,
Across
Sure,
the
sure.
board, it's a beautifully shot film.
Oh yeah,
it's really cool.
And we did talk about this when we were, before we were getting together. One of the reasons why this 3D thing started to wane a little bit is there's a lot that has to go into this. It's not one print; it's like two prints.
Yeah. There were a number of contributing factors to the 3D
Demise,
fad,
yeah.
only lasting barely 2 years. First off, as you said, you have to have twice as many reels of film printed.
That's right. So that's
Yeah.
costing you
It's-
money.
It cost a lot more. If you wanted to send this out to 400 theaters, you needed 800 prints.
Right.
Because you needed a left eye print and a right eye print.
Right.
You also had twice as much shipping cost.
That's the thing
Yeah,
that gets
everything
me.
about it.
And you were shipping these giant reels.
Yeah.
Space, money, everything.
And then on top of that, if you had a film that broke, which would happen, it's like, the projectionist would fix it. But if you don't, if
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not a frame act, you would have
It
to
has to
take a
be-
frame out of the other print
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
There-
to
there
make
were-
it equal.
There were economic reasons and there were technical reasons. Economic wise, also consider you've got two projectors running at the same time,
Yeah.
which by the projectionist union rules meant you had to pay two projectionists to be in the booth. So it cost more for the theaters because they had to pay two guys to be in the booth at the
That's-
same time
yeah,
too.
so it's so just not cost effective.
Hi,
Bob. Hello, Ralph.
Along those lines, by the time Dial M for Murder came out,
Yeah.
they actually ended up like sending left eye prints to the West Coast and keeping right eye prints on the East Coast. So if you saw the movie in LA and then you went and saw it in New York, you saw a very slightly different movie.
Oh my gosh, how weird! So now Arch Oboler, having done Blonde Devil in the 50s, he actually came back and revisited the format in the 60s in '66 with The Bubble.
The Bubble.
which is
The
the
Bubble.
weirdest little movie.
Yeah.
Now, I've never seen this.
Yeah.
And I've seen, synopsis of
Yeah.
the story, which sounds really fascinating. It sounds like a Twilight Zone.
It
like-
would
it's
it
like-
would have been
yeah.
a great Twilight,
Yes.
like a great half-hour Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, right.
As a feature film, it's a little.
It's a little plotting, but it's,
Yeah,
it has a weird creepiness
What's
about
the basic
it.
plot of it?
Yeah, because
Okay,
Sean,
the base-
like Matt,
yeah.
I've only heard about this.
Basic premise is this couple is on a plane. She's pregnant. The plane has to land, and they end up in this town that's enclosed in a giant bubble by some.
what are the odds?
By some creatures.
Right, some kind
And
of force.
everyone in the town seems to be under some sort of mind control.
Yeah, like in a trance, like repeating like little things over and over again. They're just like
That's creepy.
robots.
That's a little
It is
creepy.
kind of has a creepiness to it. And
Yeah.
it's a pre-Mod Squad Michael Cole.
That's right. That's right.
Deborah Wally from the Beach movies and stuff.
Wow.
That's the couple.
And now it was filmed using a system called Space Vision
Space Vision.
that allowed for really, really extreme off the screen in your face effects.
Yes, and that is
Okay.
That's what's effective about it. Yes.
So there's this one scene in particular
Oh, yeah.
in a bar where a tray with a beer bottle floats off the screen and right up to you.
And it's pretty awesome. Now that's weird.
If only real bars could.
But my introduction to this movie, though, I did not know about the existence of this movie, but in the I think late 70s or early 80s, they re-released this in theaters as The Fantastic Invasion of Planet Earth.
Yeah.
So this
Oh, it was retired.
That's what that is?
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And like,
Oh.
but when I not knowing what this was, and I think it was in 3D in the theaters, right? Yeah. So I thought, this is gonna be cool. It's gonna be like Star Wars.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck is this? I've since now watched it and appreciated for just
Poor
its
Sean
weirdness.
Sheridan.
Like I'm like,
This is no good at all.
even as a kid, I remember like my mom like, what is this movie? This isn't. Where's the spaceships? And like like
Your
it's-
mom?
Yeah.
I love your mom.
What is this? But like,
they just read, like I said, don't believe everything you see in.
that was like it was such an extreme example of that.
So
Like,
Sean, you're not recommending?
no, I do. Now I have.
Wait,
like,
you are?
like Eric says, it's very much. It is like an extended Twilight Zone episode, but it's done in. It's such a strange kind of.
I want to see it.
There's
It's
this
worth
one.
seeing.
There's this one really, really weird sequence where one of the characters like sits down in this sort of brain control
Oh my gosh! Yes.
organic chair thing.
And there's like these
And
rubber.
has this mind trip. All these rubber masks.
Yeah, and
come
claws come at you.
floating up
It's,
at you.
and
Yeah.
that
That sounds
3D is really
neat. I
good.
wanna
Yeah,
see
it's
that,
very
though.
strange.
So is this out on Blu-ray too? Or?
It is.
Yes,
it
yes.
is. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Is the are the masks good masks or
No, they're like
No, they're-
Halloween cheap Halloween masks.
Yeah.
They look like Topstone masks.
Even better.
It makes it better.
I'm
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I'm still there.
But like, it wasn't also this is a time where they started doing a little bit more like titillation and adults only stuff. Now there's a movie that 1969, I think, The Stewardesses.
Okay, this is a
Stewardesses.
famous.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is
Because it's like a blockbuster hit. This movie, it was like kind of like a day in the life of swinging stewardesses,
and shockingly, I haven't seen this.
yeah. But I mean, it was
Yeah,
like a soft core kind of sex movie, but it was in 3D, right?
That's right. Yeah, it was Chris Condon and Alan Silliphant made this movie, The Stewardesses, and for a while it was actually the most successful 3D movie.
I'll bet it was.
Stewardesses in your lap.
Its profit margin was huge.
That's hilarious.
It was constantly being shown, whether it was being shown at college campuses or
Right.
or being roadshowed around. But yeah, the Stewardesses did really, really well. Chris Condon's company was Stereo Vision, and
Stewardess vision.
he went on to have a long career in 3D after that.
Right. So that's just,
But-
Did he just do more of that kind of thing, or
No. He worked on a number of the 1980s 3D movies.
okay?
Which we'll get to. But Eric,
Yeah.
isn't it true that granted, The Stewardesses, it was the most successful 3D film, but my understanding was it wasn't always shown in 3D. Am I wrong about that, or was it always shown in 3D? Like they did a lot of midnight showings.
Okay.
Like,
Because of the subject matter, it was one of these things where they would take it from town to town.
Yeah.
And depending on what the moral turpitude laws were in the town they were showing it in, they would re-edit the movie.
Wait a minute. I thought this was just a movie about hardworking stewardesses.
Yeah, hardworking stewardesses who get naked and sleep with pilots and things like that.
So this
in
was like
3D.
this was the first overtly sexy 3D movie.
How far do the nipples come out?
Not necessarily the first.
There were others.
In the 1960s, there were movies called Nudie Cuties,
And some of those are in 3D.
and
You know about those.
That's what I call my wife.
There were
sometimes.
there were some 3D Nudie Cuties, and
Right.
there had been some 3D burlesque, like striptease films done
Okay,
in the
right.
50s.
Yeah.
Well, a more high profile kind of adult movie at the time, which was like 1974, Andy Warhol's Flesh for Frankenstein.
Sure.
Which really
But then you add
took
gore
advantage-
to it,
Yeah,
yeah.
gore and sex.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Everything.
Yeah,
you do.
that scene with the liver on a pipe.
Yes.
now listen.
I hate liver.
Now wait for listeners before you run out and go. Gee, Andy Warhol's Frankenstein. I just want to let you know that
Yeah.
it's not. To me,
It's not a great
It's
movie.
not a great movie.
No, but it's kind of a thing of its time, but it's
Right.
kind
It's
of
a
worth seeing at least
spectacle.
once.
Yeah.
But-
Don't.
but it's
you
not a
don't-
great movie.
Udo Kier.
Yeah.
Udo Kier, I
Yes.
love in everything.
Now,
but
granted,
that's it.
it's no Ape, the South Korean
Yes.
classic
Yeah.
from 1976, not to be confused with King Kong. By the way, one of the shoddiest, most ridiculous giant ape movies ever made.
So is
in 3D.
that like an acronym or something?
It's APE.
yeah, I don't know. Like,
And what does
I
that
don't
stand
know.
for?
Asinine. I don't know. I don't know.
Production.
Yes.
So Sean, I see we're kind of veering towards the 70s. Before we get there, I just want to say that we've covered a lot of really interesting films. I want to point and the Stooges, the shorts, but there were a bunch of cartoons with some famous.
sure.
I have one on 16.
Yes, there were some famous characters because again, a lot of these animation studios were trying to capitalize on the whole 3D. For
Right.
example, there's Bugs Bunny did a lumberjack rabbit.
Right.
Donald Duck did Disney Working for Peanuts, which
yeah.
is a really neat one with the elephant and the Peanuts
And
Chip 'n' Dale.
Yeah.
Woody Woodpecker, the hypnotic hick. You'd like that. Why? And James, I know you like this one. Actually, Casper the Friendly Ghost, Boo Moon.
Oh.
Yeah. And
there was a Popeye.
Yeah, there's a
3D
Popeye.
cartoon,
That's
too.
what, but the thing that I loved about Casper in 3D is because he's kind of, you can see through him, kind of, it's just something I really love.
No, that's cool.
3D. Yeah.
That's cool. Lumberjack Rabbit is one that I have not 3D on 16.
This is a great
but it's
short anyway.
that one's great anyway. And then you throw the 3D with being able to see through a carrot.
Yeah.
Because he's like Bugs Bunny in this
Right.
movie. He in this cartoon, he stumbles upon Paul Bunyan's house. his
Of course he
land,
does.
You know, and so Paul Bunyan has a garden, and there's all these overgrown carrots, these giant
It's
carrots.
like paradise.
So
for
it's a
Bugs Bunny.
paradise, and so he's mining these carrots like a gold mine. He's got a little track set up and the mining carts.
He's very resourceful.
Yeah, it's amazing. But I love that one.
That is a great one, and so it's like the studios thought they didn't know if 3D is going to take off. They're going to do with their main characters. They did some 3D things, so there aren't a lot of these animated cartoons, but the few that exist are lots of fun.
Right.
Well,
right.
yeah. You know, the studios at that time would show a short subject with the feature.
Right.
So,
Okay. Right.
So there were a number of different kinds of 3D short subjects that were also produced at the same time.
Were they meant to show before a 3D feature?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool.
Just to go kind of far back for a second, but if you could tell me where this would fit in, some sort of movie schedule, would be Three-Dimensional Murder.
I was hoping that was what you were bringing
good.
up. Yeah.
What is that?
Whoa.
Third Dimensional Murder is a film that was done at MGM.
Okay.
It was a Pete Smith film.
Is it a short or is it a feature?
It's
It's a short.
Okay.
is it like about 40 minutes or something? Like
No,
that?
no, it's
Even shorter?
It's shorter than
Okay.
that. Yeah,
I don't know this one.
Yeah.
So at MGM, Pete Smith actually did 3 3D short films.
Okay.
The first one was in 1935. It was called Audioscopics, and then he did one in 1938. I want to say, called New Audioscopics. Audioscopics.
Wow.
Audioscopics actually got an Academy Award
Wow.
for like short subject.
Okay.
And then in 1941, if you're not familiar with the Pete Smith films, he did these sort of compilation films that he narrated, and he narrated them in a really kind of comical way.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So the first two, the Audioscopics films, were actually 3D footage that had been shot. Some of it back in the 1920s. He bought some of that film.
Oh, okay.
And then sort of
Kind of repurposed it.
Put it together, repurposed it,
Okay.
and created a funny narration to go with it.
Okay.
Okay. Kind of like an early version of Mystery Science Theater in some ways.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's clever.
But then this Third Dimensional Murder was a new script. And it
Third
was-
Dimensional Murder.
Yeah, and it was kind of done to cash in actually on the Frankenstein craze.
No.
Because there's a lot of great horror images
Really?
throughout this
Yeah.
thing.
I don't
It-
know this.
It's a detective goes to this haunted house,
Okay.
and it's all done with Pete Smith's corny narration.
Okay.
Detective goes to a haunted house where he runs into just about every thing that could possibly poke you in the face,
Oh wow. Okay.
from like a wooden Indian to a really politically incorrect native with a spear,
Right. Right.
a witch, and it all
Is there a
Sounds
Frankenstein
cool.
monster too?
and yes, it all culminates with MGM's ripoff of Karloff's Frankenstein
Really?
monster on the roof, throwing things right at the camera.
Really?
Oh my
yeah,
gosh, I
yeah.
gotta see this.
Pretty cool.
I have it. I'll show it to you.
Oh.
And and it was released in that red blue anaglyph.
Oh wow. Jeez.
And then in the 1950s got a re-release. So
okay.
kind of
I saw it on Turner Classic Movies.
Oh,
Yeah,
love
yeah,
Turner
yeah.
Oh,
Classics.
Matt, I have to check this one out.
Yeah.
I haven't seen
I've got it somewhere, but you have it.
Of course you do.
It's on my laptop.
All right,
Right.
so we've done the
It's-
50s.
yeah, so I
kind
wanna
of
get-
into the 60s.
and 70s kind of. Now I
70s.
want to get into like there's a bit of a kind of a resurgence, a kind
Resurgence,
of
yeah.
renaissance a little bit of the 3D format in the 80s.
And did that
in the-
start with Coming at You?
Yeah, because the coming out was, I guess, Italian, Spanish,
1981.
kind of like a Western.
Yeah,
kind of-
yeah. Well, there was a wave of 3D that came about in the 1980s that kind of followed. There had been a lot of 3D in the 70s that was all sort of exploitation type
Right,
pictures.
drive-in kind of, right.
And at that time, Universal re-released some of their 3D in
Right.
anaglyph.
Yeah.
some systems were developed in the 80s that allowed 3D to be shown using polarized projection from a single projector.
So that explains why. Okay.
And actually, Chris Condon, who had done the stewardesses, was one of the people who had developed one of these systems. What they were doing was printing the left and the right onto a single strip of film as two widescreen images, the left over the right, in one single frame.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Either that, or sometimes they would do the left and the right side by side, squeezed anamorphically.
Okay.
But they could get the left and the right images all to fit in one.
So it
frame
made
of
more
film.
convenient instead of having two projectors and all this stuff.
And then you'd put a special box on the front of the lens of the projector that had mirrors in it that allowed you to basically split the two
okay.
I see.
and dial them in so that they're lined up on screen.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And project it through two polarizers so you could wear the glasses, the silver screen, and you'd see the 3D. And that system worked pretty well when you aligned your mirrors and everything properly.
Right.
So that created this 1980s wave of 3D. That
I mean, like Coming At Ya and Treasure of the Four Crowns.
Now
Tony Anthony.
one thing to note, the 80s 3D movies tended to be mostly like B-genre movies.
Right.
Yeah.
In
right.
the 50s, we touched on a few, but there were 50 pictures made, and they ranged from costume dramas to musicals. A lot of people aren't aware that the musical Kiss Me Kate was a 3D movie.
That's interesting.
You had the real low budget stuff like Catwomen of the Moon, but you also had Hondo, John Wayne's Western, was a 3D movie.
Right.
So
Yeah, it seemed like in the 80s, like it was like when you took these kind of like waning franchises, like, Jaws or Amityville Horror or Friday the 13th.
Well,
Maybe not waning franchises, but like it was
a lot of them were up to their third picture.
Right. Amityville
So
3D,
if you're making
Friday
Jaws
the 13th,
3,
yeah, of course.
Why not?
Right.
Yeah.
And it was also, my theory has always been that in the 50s, if the movie studios were competing with TV, in the 80s, they were competing with home video. So instead of your Betamax or your VHS,
True,
it's like,
right.
hey, we need something else to get butts in the seats.
Now you can have Jason come at you, in 3D, the Jaws,
Right.
Shark. I mean, yeah, it seemed like that was a little wave there for a while. Also, you had because the Mad Max wave was popular, you had Space Hunter, Adventures in the Forbidden Zone, and Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin.
Destruction of Jared
Movies with
Sin.
long titles in 3D.
The fact that they assume we know who Jared Sin is, and we care about his destruction.
Also, spoiler, Jared Sin's
Hey,
Well, then there was
to let you know.
there was Amityville 3D.
right.
And there
Parasite,
Parasite.
That's right.
Charles Band.
Yeah.
You're wearing the glasses right
Yes,
now.
I am right now. But yeah, and it was just interesting kind of time where like you just
Rottweiler, The Hounds of Hell.
yes, I know that one. There's an obscure slasher movie called Silent Madness from the early 80s, which is in 3D. I haven't seen
Okay.
it. but
And,
I'll check it out.
of course, since 3D was so big in the 80s, Disney capitalized on it and decided to. Who's the biggest star of the time? Michael
Right,
Jackson. And then
right.
they created Captain EO, which played at both Disney and...
Francis Ford Coppola directed it.
3D had been a thing at Disneyland going all the way back to the early days.
Yeah.
Right.
You mentioned the Donald Duck cartoon working
Yes.
for Peanuts. That was a film that showed at Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
They did a film with the Mouseketeers called the Mouseketeers Jamboree in 3D
Oh.
that showed at Disneyland. And 3D at theme parks became something of a staple. So even when, there's this roller coaster of 3D having popularity and then kind of going away for a while and then having popularity. But there's always been these 3D attractions at the theme parks.
Right. That became a
But
big
Captain
thing.
EO was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Jackson was a big superstar of the day.
Angelica Houston was
Angelica
in it.
Houston and
Dick
Academy
Shawn.
Award winner.
Francis Ford Coppola directed.
I mean, come on.
George
And-
Lucas wrote it.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it's pretty god awful.
I remember when I went to see it. I was so excited, and because I had seen just not clips, I had just seen stills.
Images.
Ooh,
Look
yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I went to see it. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, no, it's bad. I need to ask you about Coming At Ya, because this is a film where my friends and we all headed down to the movie theater to see Coming At Ya, and we couldn't get in because I think it was we either rated R or there was a reason why we couldn't get in.
Was it rated R?
Was it rated R?
I'm telling you, this is
It's got some violence in it.
Maybe it was
Right.
sold out, Matt.
Maybe it was. I
remember-
honestly don't remember, but I remember all of us going, ah, yeah, and I never saw it. But to this day, I am a big Tony Anthony fan from the Stranger series, which is a bunch of spaghetti western films.
Right.
And he's actually a really great kind of take on Clint Eastwood with a little bit of humor. He's got a little Dirk Benedict to him. But
Right.
those films are great, but I've never seen this movie. Is it any good? So no. Okay.
I haven't seen Comanche, but I've seen Treasure of the Four Crowns, which is basically a shameless Raiders of the Lost Ark ripoff.
Is that any good?
But it's not good, but it's,
No,
it's hilarious.
okay.
It's fun though. It's like talk about shamelessly shoving things at the camera. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I love you, Sean, but you tend to. There's with certain generations of film, you're like, but it's fun. You're like,
It's no GOG, but it's pretty good.
The 80s movie that I really liked was Star Chaser, The Legend of Orin.
you know what? I was hoping you were going to bring that up because I love that, and
I've
it's
never
animated.
seen that one actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first animated feature in 3D.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I think that 3D was pretty good.
Yeah, well, it was a Korean co-production, and the animation the character animation is relatively TV quality.
Yeah.
Okay? You know, it's not Disney style animation, and it's a Star Wars capitalizing on the whole space.
The design
battle
of it,
thing.
I thought, was pretty good.
They came up with a really interesting technique to do all of their spaceships and space battles. They actually wanted to do computer graphics, but at the time,
Still
in
too,
1985,
Right.
it was too cost prohibitive. But some of the guys who were working on it had worked on Tron, and realized, well, we don't have the supercomputers we need to do like fully rendered
right.
graphics, especially in 3D. But we can plot wireframe versions of these spaceships.
Okay.
So what they did was they used a pen plotter to actually draw the spaceships, and then did traditional ink and paint over the drawings.
Oh, wow.
Went to cell animation from
It's
that.
really cool.
So you have this okay, acceptable character animation, and then like geometrically perfect flying spaceships.
Yeah. No, it's I
Interesting.
really like
I gotta
that
see
one.
that. So, but did that phase not last too long? Because it seems like by the end of the 80s there wasn't as many, and it seems like in the 90s
Yeah,
there weren't too many feature films in 3D.
It was another brief period there,
Right.
from just in the early 80s.
Right.
And again, there were technical issues with showing 3D. That first off, in order to do polarized projection, again, theaters had to put silver screens in. You didn't have a silver screen, you couldn't show 3D.
Oh, okay.
And while a single strip of film eliminated the issues that you had with trying to keep everything in perfect sync,
Right.
there were still a lot of alignment problems. You had this mirror box on the front. If your mirrors weren't in perfect alignment on screen, you'd have those vertical misalignments, or
Right.
you'd have keystoning. And you also had a problem with, because it's a single frame of film, you'd end up with sort of a hot spot that was different in each eye.
Oh, okay.
So it worked, but it often had technical issues. And, no offense to the people who made them, but the 3D movies of the 80s weren't really shot all that well.
Well, I mean, Jaws 3D, like you see that movie, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, for those people who are like maybe disappointed by Jaws 2, it's like, holy shit. When you see Jaws 3, it's like, oh my God.
Although Friday the 13th, Part 3,
I do
is when
enjoy
you.
that one.
I think
Yeah,
that
and
I
that's
really, and that's the first time
the
you
birth
really
of
get
the hockey mask.
The hockey
Sure,
mask.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, yes,
yeah.
but still, it seemed like it was more for almost going back to like the exploitation drive-in
Yes, yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Well, yeah. Now, if you like, off-screen stuff, Friday the 13th, Part 3, it's like every 3 minutes they had to have something.
every weapon he shoots
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
harpoon
Yeah.
at the guy. Yeah, I mean, it is pretty cool.
I do like that one.
And even in the scenes that don't have Jason Voorhees doing something, you've got like someone with a yo-yo,
Yeah,
or someone
totally.
with a baseball bat, or
Yeah.
or someone with
Yeah,
Dental floss.
they
yeah.
Yeah,
they
they
took
went
advantage
to a
of
lot
it.
of effort to make sure that
well,
every
there's-
few minutes there was something.
Yeah,
that
there's a
poked
guy.
you.
There's a guy whose eye pops out. Like Jason crushes a guy's head and it
Yeah.
pops out, and so yeah, it's fun. But but the '90s, I think the only genre film I can think of major release at the time was a Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, 1991.
And-
that was in 3D.
Well, only a section of it toward the end.
Right,
It actually
right.
did the same kind of thing that the
The
mask
mask.
did.
You're right. You're right.
Where when they go into like Freddy's final dream sequence, you put
kinda
on
clever.
your 3D glasses.
Right,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. But like,
Easy on your eyes.
yeah. So like, but it seems like is it because of digital technology? Because once you got into the 2000s, like you said, major tentpole movies, all the superhero movies, so many Pixar movies. Like now, it's kind of a commonplace thing to have 3D.
Well, here's the
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
that gets here's the thing that gets me though. My understanding is there are some big tentpole films that say and in 3D, but in actuality they weren't actually shot in
Yeah.
3D. There's a process for like there's the Clash of the Titans.
That was an infamous one, right? Where like it was not shot in 3D, and they released it in 3D, and it wasn't the best.
And
And they're getting better at doing that,
there was-
right?
there
Where
was
they go
also-
after the fact and make it 3D.
and it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Well, okay. To address the first part of that, digital projection opened up a whole new possibility for showing 3D.
Yeah, totally.
You had, I guess the early adopter for 3D and digital projection was Robert Rodriguez when he did Spy Kids 3D
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
and Shark Boy and Lava Girl that followed that.
And wasn't Polar Express one of the first ones
Well,
too?
Polar Express was an early one that was converted to IMAX 3D, but that was
Okay.
also a conversion, and I mean it was a
okay.
CG movie
Right,
to begin
CG,
with,
right.
not planned as 3D,
Okay.
but it was ultimately released in 3D. What happened as theaters were being urged to install digital projection, 3D became a selling factor for that. It was, well, why should we upgrade our film to digital? And part of it was, well, Disney pushed for Chicken Little.
Oh, okay. Right.
Chicken Little was going to be 3D. And if theaters wanted to show it in 3D, they needed to go digital. So the studios actually started subsidizing theaters to upgrade their projection equipment. Because
okay.
ultimately they wanted
okay.
all the theaters to go digital.
I see.
Right.
Because it's a lot easier to send a hard drive to a theater than a film print.
Sure.
Understood.
Sure, yeah.
Understood.
So Chicken Little was really the first that got a major release in what we now see as like
modern
real
3D.
D when you go to the theater and
Yeah.
you wear
Right.
circular polarized glasses.
Right. Oh, okay.
The
Interesting.
Rodriguez films were done in red blue anaglyph. They were shown with digital projection, but the 3D aspect of that hadn't been installed yet.
Right.
2006, I believe it was, Chicken Little came out. And at that point, there were only a couple hundred screens that could show it in 3D, but it was the start of a push. And that number of screens kept increasing over the next few years. By the time you got to 2009, Avatar came out,
There
and
it
that
is.
opened the floodgates.
Avatar,
that's-
yes, Avatar was the big thing. That's the one that really changed, I think, the whole world for 3D because it was such a huge spectacle. I mean, I know the guys here that they're not really fans of it, but that just technologically,
wait a minute.
I mean,
Yeah,
it was
technology.
No, I'm not a big fan of the movie, but the fact that it was in 3D saved it for me because the 3D is so amazing.
Yeah.
Like it's so immersive. And the other one that I think is certainly not in the same category, but I also feel like does that is surprisingly Prometheus. I think the 3D in that film is great, but yeah, both those movies, I think they're terrible movies, but just the design of it and the 3D and everything else. I mean,
Right,
when you're
right.
just walking through that crazy Avatar world,
yeah.
it's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I like to say, and this addresses what you were talking about before about conversions.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so much an issue of whether something, at least these days, whether it was shot in 3D with native 3D left and right cameras or whether the 3D was done in post-production. I like to describe it as either intentional 3D or afterthought 3D.
Okay.
Right.
When the planning goes into it from the outset that, hey, this is going to be 3D.
Eventually it's going to be 3D.
Right.
And the compositions are done for 3D. We've got storytelling devices that'll work in 3D. And the
Right.
3D is actually there as an artistic tool for the director to use.
Right.
And they're aware of it.
Right.
Whether it was shot natively or converted, because the conversion companies are actually quite good now.
Okay.
Right.
So a good example of that is Guardians of the Galaxy.
That wasn't shot in original 3D?
No, that wasn't shot in 3D. That
Now
was a
that I
conversion.
didn't know. I thought it was 3D.
And that looks really beautiful.
It actually did.
yeah.
Yeah.
But James Gunn knew it was going to be 3D and composed his shots to work in 3D.
I
So,
see.
for instance, one of the things to consider is that, like in a typical 2D movie, you have two characters having a conversation. You'll have an over-the-shoulder shot of the one character cut to an over-shoulder shot of the other character. In 3D, now you've got a big shoulder in the foreground
Right.
that's sticking out of the screen.
Right.
So while you can
What's wrong with that?
you can do a
3D shoulder.
You can
is
do a
amazing.
conversion on that, but like if you were shooting that scene in 3D, you maybe would compose it a little differently so that the shoulder is not prominently
Right,
in the
right,
frame.
Right.
So like watch Guardians of the Galaxy. Watch like that scene when they're on the prison and they're discussing all of the things that Rocket Raccoon needs to stage an escape. It's all done as a long take with them sitting at the table in the foreground and Groot is in the background reaching up to get that battery pack.
Oh, right,
Oh,
right.
I remember that. Yeah.
And other characters are doing things around and there's just like you can watch that scene over and over again and each time look somewhere else and see
Right.
something happening.
Let's go.
So Gunn understood that even though they weren't shooting it in 3D, and you have to kind of figure a lot of this is green screen, so a lot of it's being done in post-production anyway.
Yeah, right.
As long as every shot is an effects shot, they've moved the 3D process there, so they actually have control over the amount of depth and all of this
Right.
that they
Right,
can,
yeah.
that they
It is,
can
yeah,
adjust.
they have so much control with digital and yeah.
So if the director goes in knowing this is going to be 3D and here are the ways that I'm going to use the medium,
Right.
you can get really good 3D. If the director says, I don't want to be bothered with the 3D, I'm just going to shoot it, they'll make it 3D later.
Right.
Then you get the subpar afterthought 3D.
What would
Okay.
be some of the ones that you've felt didn't really do a good job of that?
Well, okay. You mentioned Clash of the Titans,
Titans,
which
yeah.
clearly that was one of the early conversions.
Right.
And the conversion wasn't done all that well.
This is not the Harryhausen one from 1980.
No. This was the one
2010.
that it came out just a couple months after Avatar.
Yeah.
And was never meant to be 3D.
Yeah.
Avatar did really well.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers decided, hey, let's get this converted. And I believe they only had 8 weeks to do the whole movie
You're kidding.
Jeez.
to do all the conversion work.
Oh.
So there are a lot of flaws there. There were a number of conversions between 2010 and 2013 that, they had flaws. There was Cats and Dogs
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
3D
yeah.
that, dogs are in the pound and you're seeing them through a chain link fence and it's all
Yeah, I'm getting a headache just thinking about it.
Now, at the same time, there were some converted 3D movies that were actually done well at the time, considering that this was all a new thing. But as these companies did more and more of these pictures, they've gotten a lot better at it. So
Right.
basically, if you see a Marvel movie in 3D,
Yeah.
that's a conversion.
Yeah,
Really?
right.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I did not know that.
And actually, it's something of a sad state right now, but there really aren't any features being shot in 3D anymore.
Because of the conversion process has been so good
The
now.
conversion process
Oh.
Interesting.
is so good, and a lot of what's being released in 3D is going through a whole compositing phase anyway.
Right.
So they've kind of shifted that whole cost of 3D to the back end.
Okay.
So what about because I know we were talking about the 70s, how you had a lot of the exploitation and drive-in. What I thought was interesting in this decade, though, is that along with the big tentpole movies, you still had the kind of like the exploitation drive-in aspect. Like you had My Bloody Valentine 3D, Piranha,
Which was shot in 3D. My
Okay,
Bloody
and Piranha
Valentine.
3D,
Yeah.
and Saw 7 was in 3D, and
Piranha 3D, by the way. That is a rockin' good time.
I've not seen it yet. I hear that's really
Wasn't
fun.
it Piranha 3 Double D?
No,
There-
there
That's
is
your
that.
version.
Yeah.
But there were some horror films. I mean, even Dario Argento made a Dracula film in 3D.
There were 2 Piranha movies made in this digital cycle. One of them was shot in 3D. One of them was converted to 3D.
Okay.
Which,
what was the other
I don't know
Piranha
which.
one?
Which is the one with Richard Dreyfuss?
That's Piranha 3D, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with Jerry O'Connell and Elizabeth Shue, I think, are in it.
Yeah,
Christopher
I like
Lloyd.
that. I
Yeah.
maybe just because I enjoyed that movie, but
Right.
I remember liking all the effects in that.
So there's still kind of that spirit of let's make a a in your face horror film in 3D, which is kind of refreshing in a way.
There've been a number of genre films.
Right.
It kind of harkens back to what I was saying, that the studios tend to look at 3D as something to be used for spectacle,
Right.
and horror and sci-fi and superheroes.
Yeah, they just lend
that's
themselves to it.
spectacle.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
course.
now this kind of brings me to kind of the future, because this is what I want to ask you, sir. Is so Avatar, which is not Matt's favorite, was huge, and so we've had these advancements in 3D technology. Well, at presently, you have James Cameron spending nearly
$1 trillion.
$1 billion to create 3 additional Avatar films. Avatar 2, 3. Hang on
to
over
subject
there.
them to the world.
Will you guys just calm down? Let me tell James here. So he's going to be
No,
making.
I wanna tell James.
No, he's doing
James?
these 3 movies, and they're spending a ton of money. Now, I've heard rumors that one of the things that they're doing is they're trying to make the advancement of 3D to go a step further, where you can go to see a 3D movie and not wear glasses. I mean, have you heard about this? And I've seen a 3D TV experiment where it was, here, Larry, you don't have to wear the glasses. And it was one of these things where when I'm looking at it, you have to be in a perfect spot to see through. And if you move, then
Your head
suddenly there's
explodes.
no.
That sounds great.
No, your head doesn't explode. But I'm wondering, it's like the thing that gets me is Matt, as he brought up, Avatar, there was a spectacle. Everyone went to see it because it was this big deal.
Right.
And now you have a studio spending a ton of money on not 1, not 2, but 3 films.
Yeah, are we going to the well a few too
That's
many
what I'm
times?
wondering, Eric. What's the future going to hold? Is this Avatar? Do you think this is going to work? I mean,
And how about the rest of these 3D movies? Like, do you see this finally getting old to a movie-going audience?
Well, it's always been kind of cyclical. Looking all the way back to the Victorian period, you had this period of popularity of stereoscopes, and then they kind of fell out of favor as people started going to cinemas.
Right.
They didn't have their parlor entertainment anymore. They went out to be entertained.
Right.
Then television came along.
Yep.
People stopped going out, so
Right.
3D came back.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, 1980s, you had
Video,
home video.
right. Yeah, there's always
3D came back again. And digital brought 3D into theaters again. And this is actually, it's been you can look at the headlines for the last decade. Whenever someone writes about 3D, they always say 3D's dead.
Yeah.
Well, this 3D wave started in 2006, and now it's 2018. So we've had 12 years now.
Yeah, it's going
of
pretty
3D
strong.
yeah,
movie
yeah,
devices.
yeah.
That said, for the past 2 years, none of the major electronics companies have been making 3D TVs.
Which I was going to ask
Oh,
you, which
yeah,
is,
like, whatever
I've
happened to
noticed that
that,
for a while
right.
there when you
Yeah.
walk into Best Buy,
Yeah.
there'd always
Right.
be these demonstrations.
Yeah.
And I know that the people that I know who usually upgrade their system periodically,
Right.
They don't care about it anymore.
Yeah, well, the timing for 3D TV was really, really unfortunate.
Okay.
You might remember back in 2009, they did the whole analog to digital changeover.
Yeah.
Where you either needed to get a set-top box for your old TV or you
yeah.
needed to buy a new TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, most people decided, okay, well, I'm ready to
upgrade.
upgrade and got their
Flat screen.
their first HD
Yeah.
flat screen TV. Well, the cycle for replacing TVs, I believe, runs about every 6 years. People don't want to replace a TV until 6 years have passed.
That's about right.
Then they'll consider it. Well, 3D TVs hit the market in 2011. 2 years earlier, everyone had just bought a new TV.
Yeah. Right.
But how do you know that that's like...
And the consumer electronics companies really only give a new feature 2 to 3 years to catch. And it's their marketing thing. So if you went to the Consumer Electronics Show in 2011, 2012, even 2013, it was all about 3D TVs. Then they started pushing 4K.
Yeah.
And like Best Buy had a commercial where someone buys a 3D TV, gets it home, and then sees a truck go by with a sign that says, coming soon, 4D TV. And the guy says, why did I buy a 3D TV? No. This was a Best Buy commercial. They're trying to sell 3D TVs in the store, but their commercial is saying, wait till the next thing.
No.
So I gotta ask you this, because you were saying, about the upgrading every 6
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
So what you mean to say is that there is actually a TV buying season? That companies
sort
can
of
kind
sort of
of-
a feature cycle. So
Okay.
for instance, 3D was the selling point. Now our TVs have 3D until the next big feature comes along. And then here's our 4K TV. Oh, and it's got 3D.
So you can
Right.
so you can still get 3D with your 4D. Is
Well,
4K.
you could
Or, I'm sorry,
4K.
4K.
yeah, you could for a while. What ended up happening was 2016 model year was the last year that the major electronics companies were including 3D as a feature.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's a matter of technology that they were licensing, that they would have had to re-up their license on,
All right.
or if it was just a matter of cost cutting because that was an additional bit of electronics that they'd have to have in there. You can still get a 2016 model 3D TV, but there were no 2017s. And as far as I know, there aren't any 2018 models. Wow.
Yeah, I think
They
it's
got to be
also-
cheaper now, right?
Isn't it also consumer confusion, though? Because for me, if I was considering getting a 3D TV, I'd be looking at like a 3D Blu-ray saying, okay, I can just get that on my 2D TV,
Yeah,
wear
well,
the glasses, and
this-
I don't need a 3D TV.
This was the other issue. In order to be able to watch 3D on your 3D TV, you needed stuff to watch.
Right.
And when the first 3D TVs came out, there were no 3D Blu-rays available yet.
right.
Wow.
Right.
Man.
So, and what few Blu-rays were available were packaged with the TVs. So, if you wanted to be able to watch Avatar at home, you could only do that if you bought a Panasonic TV because it was packaged with Panasonic TVs.
Did not know this.
I did not know this either.
Wow.
You know, if you wanted to watch a DreamWorks movie in 3D at home, you had to buy a Samsung TV.
But hasn't that changed now?
And so it wasn't. It was a couple years before there were enough commercially available 3D Blu-rays
Right.
that people were like, okay, well maybe now I'll consider getting the TV. And what wasn't really made all that clear was to watch 3D on your 3D TV, you also needed a 3D Blu-ray player.
Right.
So if you'd already bought a Blu-ray player, well now you had to upgrade your TV and your Blu-ray player, and you had to buy discs that were twice as expensive as just
Right.
buying the 2D
You
version.
might as well just upgrade your house at that point.
But so you do need both of those things to be
Yeah.
able to watch this.
Yeah.
That's too confusing. It's like, no wonder it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
good point.
But what's happening now, the latest trend in 3D is actually in virtual reality and augmented reality. So
Can't wait for that.
you know whether or not it's going to catch on mainstream.
Yeah.
You know, you look at what Google did with the Google Cardboard, where they made an open source viewer that anyone could manufacture, which actually harkens all the way back to something that Holmes did in the 1860s. He didn't patent his stereoscope. So anyone could manufacture it. And that actually helped with mass consumer adoption of these things
Right.
because every company that could make one did.
Yeah.
Google decided to do the same thing and made this design for a viewer that could be cut out of a pizza box if that was all you had handy. And then
Save that pizza box.
any company
Yeah.
that wanted to could, make a cardboard viewer that you could put your cell phone in and use it as a stereoscopic viewer. So they marketed this. The New York Times put a cardboard viewer in every issue that went out to their subscribers on a Sunday. And that's hundreds of thousands of these viewers that are now in people's hands. And if they have a phone that's compatible, they can watch 3D on it.
Interesting.
Wow.
Some of the coolest 3D VR experiences I've had now are using like the HTC Vive, which is a room scale. It's actually tracking you, so you can walk around a room. And it's like, have you seen Ready Player One?
Yeah.
It's not quite the Oasis, but you can actually walk around an environment, and you've got a controller in each hand that lets you actually manipulate things.
That's incredible.
So ILM put out a Star Wars demo that runs like 5 minutes, where you're standing on the surface of Tatooine, and the Millennium Falcon flies in from the distance, and this is all in like 360 3D. Flies in right over your head and lands. The ramp opens up, R2-D2 rolls out, comes right up to you, starts talking to you.
Really? Wow.
You hear like Han Solo over the loudspeaker saying, hey kid, I need you to help me fix the ship. A piece of the ship drops down and you have to do repairs on it.
Wow.
Then an Imperial transport flies in. It lands somewhere over the hills. All these stormtroopers come running over the hills shooting at you. R2 pops a hatch open. You take your controller, reach in, come out with a lightsaber.
Wow.
Power it up, and now you are standing on Tatooine with a lightsaber, deflecting blaster fire back at the stormtroopers.
Wow.
So now you're not just watching
Yeah,
a 3D movie. You're
experiencing-
actually
you're participating.
it's interactive now.
God.
Well,
So-
we're really close to Star Trek's holodeck then, is what you're saying.
It's actually, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to have the computing power and the head-mounted display at this point
Right.
to do it. You mentioned glasses-free 3D.
I did, yes.
There have been all kinds of glasses-free displays that typically work for one person.
Yeah.
Right.
And we mentioned lenticulars
Yeah.
earlier. And for a lenticular to work, you don't just have a left and a right. You have maybe 24 images that are all sliced up under the little lenses.
Yeah.
The glasses-free TVs, glasses-free screens work in a very similar way, either using a lenticular or some sort of barrier that allows what's on screen to be directed either to your left eye or right eye. And the more images you have between the left and the right, the wider that sweet spot that your head has to be in. There are some TVs that have these screens, and you do have to keep your head in a pretty
Right, that
narrow
spot,
spot.
yeah.
And they'll have several different spots.
Yeah.
But it really isn't that
Yeah, it doesn't seem-
conducive to sitting
yeah.
and watching a whole movie.
Yeah. Especially if you're
There's
fidgety.
there's
Yeah, if you have neck problems.
there's small screens that work for a single viewer. I actually have several various 3D phones that have glasses-free screens on them, and there's glasses-free tablets. When you start scaling it up, it gets more difficult to do.
Right, right. Yeah.
So having a glasses-free 3D screen in a theater, it's not really practical right now.
Right.
There's been ongoing research into holographic projection of movies. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
That's not to say it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. VR and holographic. Seems like that's
the thing I always hear people complain when they say they don't like 3D movies, they say they don't like wearing the glasses.
James?
Well, in the 80s, yeah, it gave me a headache. Now, I don't mind. The technology is a lot better.
I kind of don't really like the glasses because, for one, if I wear them too long, they get sweaty and then fog the lens. And that's just
They
me.
fog the lens?
I run
Are
hot.
you steamy?
I am
What?
a
Are
little
you
steamy.
serious?
I run hot. I do. But forget about that. The other problem that I have with the glasses is that it brings down the brightness.
Yes, very much so.
True.
And now we're talking about the polarized glasses.
Yes.
What's being used now are circular polarized glasses in theaters. In the 1950s, they were linear polarizers, but the principle was pretty much the same. And I should address, there's a fallacy that the press constantly puts out there, that 3D movies used red and blue glasses. And like when they talk about, 3D movies now, it's not your father's red and blue glasses.
Right.
1950s on, it was all polarized.
Right.
Red and blue was used for comic books. But once polarized projection was in theaters, not many movies were released that way.
right.
So the polarized glasses do eliminate a lot of the light, so up to 80% of it. And that has been a problem, particularly when theaters are trying to extend the life of their lamps by running them not at maximum brightness.
Like behind the screen brightness.
But the standard for a 2D movie on a screen these days is to have 14-foot Lamberts of light coming off that screen. Once you put the polarizer on the projector and the glasses on, you're cut down to maybe 4-foot Lamberts. And light's exponential, so that's a lot of light drop-off.
Yeah. And especially if you're watching a movie that has a lot of special effects that are really
Yeah.
cool
Right, or
and
dark
intricate,
scenes, like,
that you're missing all that.
Now, there's a new technology that's showing up in more and more theaters now that really, really resolves that problem, and that's laser projection. What they're doing, rather than having a xenon lamp in the lamp housing of the projector, they actually have a big laser unit in the projection booth.
that shoots lasers
With-
into your eyes.
With
It's better
No,
than that Scientology xenon lamp.
that was actually a fear. For the longest time,
Right.
the government wasn't allowing laser projection because
Wow.
you remember these like laser Pink Floyd shows that
Right,
used to happen.
yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. right.
Reflect
guess-
off someone's watch or...
Yeah, I guess there was a laser show sometime in the 1970s, I think, where like someone got a laser in their eye,
I made a lot of money that summer.
and so lasers actually ended up falling under the purview of the FDA.
Oh, my.
What?
So when laser projection became a feasible thing, there was a whole commission, the whole lobbying group to try to get the FDA to allow lasers in theaters, because there was this ban on it because of
Right.
But you're not actually projecting lasers into the audience's
Right,
eyes. What
right.
they're doing is
Darn.
they've got a big laser unit that's actually got 6 lasers in it. And each one is a different primary color because lasers can be tuned to a very narrow wavelength. So they have 2 lasers that are different wavelengths of red, 2 lasers that are different wavelengths of green, and 2 that are different wavelengths of blue. And then those all go through a fiber to the lamp housing. So it's actually just illuminating with this really intense laser light.
Right.
And
That would drive my cat crazy.
and what's really cool about this, though, is the glasses that work with these have filters in them that only let through certain wavelengths of light. And so the left eye is tuned to one of the reds, one of the greens, and one of the blues. The right eye is tuned to the other red, green, and blue. So there's nothing filtering at the projector. It's pumping all that laser light onto the screen.
That's great.
And then the glasses are letting all that laser light from the screen.
See, that's the
pass
3D
back
I
through.
want to
So,
see.
and this is
I
something
want
that James could probably watch and not get sick.
Yeah.
at.
So if you see a theater's doing laser 3D projection, it's going to be the best 3D that you'll ever see
I'm
in a
there.
theater.
Wow.
Yeah, let's
Isn't
do
there
it.
the other format too, where it's like powered by like a nuclear reactor behind the screen, and that's like a little radiation leak.
Yeah, it's projected onto the moon.
This is the thing that we've learned though today is that with the 3D has come so far, and that with all the big films that are thrown out there in 3D and stuff that's being worked on for the future, 3D I think is here to stay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
In fact, I think we should go back and take non-3D movies from the past and make them 3D.
You think we should do that?
Yeah.
Well,
Glenn
okay.
Ross. You know?
What about no? Hey, let me throw. What about classic 1933 King Kong? What about
Ooh,
that?
That'd be interesting. Right.
I would
the
certainly
Universal
like-
films, horror, Universal monster
And for
movies.
VR, Zardoz,
Well, okay.
definitely.
Warner Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
Warner Brothers in 2013 did a 3D conversion on The Wizard of Oz.
Yes, which I saw.
And
Oh,
it's
wow.
I saw,
fantastic.
No, I agree.
Oh, I wanna see this.
My daughter and I, we saw it at the Grauman's Chinese Theater, and it was spectacular.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, this was amazing because not only it was 3D and IMAX too.
Yeah.
And what was amazing is you actually saw. Haley, who played the Tin Man, I mean, you can actually see rivets on his face that you never noticed before.
There's details in
And,
the 3D
and actually,
version.
Judy Garland, which I didn't realize, you could see a little area where she had a lot of makeup because it looked like she was breaking out a little
Yes.
bit because she was
Yeah.
a teenager. And this is stuff that I'd never seen on television.
There's a bunch of things that because it's now broken out in depth. There's like things in the background that you never noticed before.
Exactly.
Like there's a giant bird, like a peacock or a crane.
Yeah.
In the back of the woods when they find the Tin Woodsman.
Yeah.
That I've never seen this big bird and walking around in the background before. And it wasn't until I saw it in 3D that I realized that the Scarecrow carries a gun.
Whoa.
I didn't get that either.
What? Why does he carry a gun?
When they go into the haunted woods, it was a leftover from the jitterbug scene that's
which
been
was
cut out. When they leave the Emerald City to go to the woods, they each take a weapon. That scene doesn't exist anymore.
Interesting.
But when they're in the haunted woods, they're still carrying the weapons at the beginning of the sequence before the flying monkeys arrive.
Wow.
So check it out.
So that
Check it out.
explains
And-
Dorothy's nunchucks.
And so the Scarecrow has a silver pistol, and he's holding it out, and I never noticed until it's like he's pointing it at me. Scarecrow's packing.
I want to see that.
Wow, that's crazy.
You know, the Scarecrow is the best Wizard of Oz character. It's a no-brainer.
But
He's back.
The other thing that happened with The Wizard of Oz, I found that I saw the whole movie now from the perspective of Toto is the hero. Because like right at the beginning, Dorothy puts Toto up on that tractor and sings.
Yep.
But Toto's in the foreground. He's the closest thing to you.
And that's the most well-behaved and well-trained dog. He's so attentive to her.
Oh,
like
yeah.
you totally buy
Yeah.
that that's her dog. It's
But
so
like
great.
after that scene, every scene now, my first thought was, okay, where's Toto? So through the whole movie, I'm like, where's Toto? And I realize this is Toto's story.
Yeah.
Because it's like, Toto is actually the catalyst for every other character's decisions.
true.
And
That's
you know,
true, you're
we'll,
right.
we'll probably concentrate on that a lot more on our Cats and Dogs episode.
There you go.
Hey, a movie that I think would be great converted to 3D is the George Powell War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there's an interesting story there.
Okay.
The story, as I've been told by Anne Robinson,
Oh, okay.
Who was the star?
who was the star of the movie,
Gene Barry.
was that George would have loved to have shot it in 3D.
Really?
I guess he had seen some other 3D demos because this was prior to the 3D craze starting.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah.
it's 50s, right?
So I suspect he probably went to one of the Gunsberg's natural vision demonstrations, but that Paramount decided it was too expensive. And so
yeah, because George Powell seems to be the kind of guy, he would have embraced that.
Oh,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
And if you look at the film, it's a big, it's big and elaborate on its own.
Here's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
was told.
Okay, from Anne.
That this is what Anne told me. She said what George really wanted to do was have the movie be 2D up until the scene where everybody puts on the protective goggles and the Martians
That's
attack
brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
LA. And then they would tell the audience, put on your protective goggles. And
That's so
from the moment
good.
when they dropped the bomb on the Martians
Yes.
on, the destruction of Los Angeles would have been 3D.
Wow.
She said
That is
that's what
pretty
George
amazing.
wanted, but they never actually got to do it.
Because the movie already has the whole stuff with like the fascination with how the Martians see.
Yeah.
Oh,
they
yeah,
had that
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
kind of
And the death rays that even in 2D come out
shoot at
you.
you. Yeah,
absolutely.
So how cool would it be to actually convert that last
Yeah,
15
right,
minutes of the
right.
movie?
I think you need
That's
to do
awesome.
this.
Well, who knows what the future will hold?
Wait,
I'm just saying, who knows
yeah.
what the future will hold in 3D?
See, Larry,
I can't say my statements.
Larry,
You're jumping
you can
all over
always
me.
tell when
thought
Larry's
you were-
trying to wind up the show because he gets this lilt in his voice.
I'm just saying that we can't have a 3D episode without mentioning Count Floyd's Monster Chiller Horror Theater. SCTV. Count Floyd, of course, was the fictional horror host. Floyd Robertson was moonlighting as Count Floyd as a horror host, and he would get crappy movies all the time. But a series of movies that he would always have on a show was it was Dr. Tongue, and Dr. Tongue was played by John Candy, and
3D House of Pancakes.
3D House of Pancakes, and Eugene Levy was a Bruno, the Hunchback. But there was Dr. Tongue's
So good.
3D House of Slave Chicks, 3D House of Stewardesses.
Oh, well, it's natural.
The 3D House of Beef. And my favorite one was Tip O'Neill's 3D House of Representatives, which was John Candy as Tip O'Neill going, "Would you like to sign this bill?" I mean, classic stuff. So
Those should actually be 3D.
Yeah. Yes.
We should
great.
convert those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So got to mention that.
Well, this has been great.
It has been great, Larry.
Three-dimensional great.
So great.
It's been
Wow.
no. I mean, and thank you so much, Eric, for being with us. You've taken us all the way from the beginning of 3D all the way to the future.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about some great movies, and
It really covers so many eras. You know,
Yes.
just the way,
Yeah,
the way
sure.
that ups
Well, and
and
it
downs.
keeps on
of it.
fighting.
And,
Yeah.
the Viewmasters are still around.
Viewmasters are still so fucking cool.
I love
First
'em.
Viewmaster came out in 1939.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can still go to the store and get a Viewmaster and get a reel. And the cool thing is, like, the reels from 1939 are the exact same size
Yeah,
and
it
shape.
works.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Awesome.
so
One
you,
of the
you've
greatest
got,
inventions of
you know,
mankind.
You've got all these years worth of Viewmaster reels that you can look at.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
go on eBay if you can and pick up some of the really old ones.
Yeah, my wife collects them too. She
Yeah,
she
I
has a lot
love
of
that
cool ones.
stuff.
Yeah.
Where they used to use puppets to
Yeah.
recreate.
Yeah, three-dimensional
Yeah.
models.
I actually brought some. I have on the table this prehistoric animals, which is dinosaurs, which I love because it is
So
it's
cool.
little puppets, and there's
And
one
nice
Superman.
sets and everything,
Yeah, beautiful
and-
sets, and I mean I have one at Disneyland from Tomorrowland, but I also have this one Frankenstein and Dracula. This one is so great because these are 3D.
Those are
puppets.
wonderful. Yeah,
These
those are great.
beautiful. The,
Yeah,
the
the-
only issue I have, Eric, is that these over time, some of these, because these were picked up in the 60s or 70s, is they've kind of changed. They've tinted.
They
to
lost
Yeah,
color.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, okay, the Sawyer's company that put out the Viewmasters, they had artists on staff who sculpted these.
Don't
figures
these
and
models
everything.
exist in like?
Yeah, where can we find
all
those?
Those little
Some
intricate sets.
of
and-
some of them exist in private collections.
God, that's so
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
I have a couple.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Which one?
We're
Yeah.
coming
Which
over
ones
to
are
your
they?
place.
I have a Fred and Barney with a dinosaur,
Really? Like little models?
James!
Oh my god!
I love that one.
and
Yeah.
a few Disney characters.
We're coming over.
Yeah.
We're coming
So
over.
3D party.
Now, speaking of 3D party, is there anything you're working on? Is there
Well,
some?
I've mentioned a couple times that I have this museum collection, and in 2014, I actually started a nonprofit called 3D Space. It's the Center for Stereoscopic Photography, Art, Cinema, and Education. It's a 501c3 nonprofit, and it's basically an arts and education organization. Ultimately, my goal is to open a whole center that'll have a museum of 3D history, a gallery
seems like a
space
no-brainer,
for
yeah.
the contemporary
That'd be so great.
stuff, a theater to show both classical and modern stuff,
Oh my God, it'd be so awesome.
and a classroom. Now, I'm not quite there yet, but I am in the process right now of opening up a gallery space where I can start showing things from the collection.
That's awesome.
And that'll be opening in 2018 at some point this year.
Awesome.
And you can find out more about 3D and 3D space and support the organization if it's something that interests you. Our website is 3-dspace.org.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
And it's, I do all kinds of 3D events all around Los
Yes,
Angeles.
you do.
Yeah.
So, like, for instance, if you were at Monsterpalooza,
Yep.
I've been doing 3D presentations, 3D screenings at Monsterpalooza for a number of years now.
Yeah.
And
We love that
they,
convention.
They give me a whole theater room to do 3D in.
So awesome.
So cool.
Nice.
And I actually did a 3D screening of It Came From Outer Space for the Heritage Square Museum, which is a bunch of Victorian houses just off the 110 freeway. And we showed It Came From Outer Space outdoors among all these Victorian houses. So it was kind of like bringing the history of 3D to the 1950s of 3D.
Cool.
And I was doing it with digital projection, which is, the present 3D.
Right.
People brought their families out. Kids were seeing this 1950s 3D movie for the first time.
Right.
Kathleen Hughes, who's in the movie,
that's
came
right.
out to introduce it.
Yep.
Wow.
She told some great stories about. There's a famous promotional picture of her screaming.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I remember that one.
She was a contract actor at Universal, so Universal did all of their 3D tests with
Yep,
her.
yep.
And she
wow.
kept saying, "I want to be in this first 3D picture at Universal."
Yeah.
And they said, "Well, we've already cast Barbara Rush. We don't have a role for you."
Right.
They finally came to her and said, "Well, there's a girlfriend role, but it's only in one scene." And she said, "I'll take it."
That's right.
So if you watch It Came From Outer Space, in the end credits, they have a shot of each of the characters. The shot of her is actually from their camera test. It's her in a swimsuit.
It's right. No, I've seen
Wow,
that
that's
because
awesome.
it's not in the movie. It's so
And
funny.
so they, since she was a contract player, they brought her in to do promotional pictures, and they just said, scream. So she's screaming,
Right.
and they're taking pictures of her. That picture has been used for everything from promoting that movie to taco commercials to
Yeah, it's like
Greeting
it's
cards.
an
or
iconic
to
screaming
represent
kind
the
of,
50s.
to represent
Yeah,
the 50s.
yeah, like-
yeah.
right. Oh, wow.
And Kathleen said that she found it on a greeting card, like a birthday card, and bought cases of them, and that was the birthday card she gave out.
Oh, that's
That's so
awesome.
great.
That's
But yeah,
cool.
no. See, she told these stories, and the kids who were in the audience were getting her
Which
autograph.
just shows you
and
how
it was just
how longevity of it is really is. It's so many.
Absolutely.
It's like the thing. It just won't die. It's just
And that's kind of why I started the nonprofit, because I've been a fan of 3D since I was a kid, and I think people don't necessarily think of 3D as this broad artistic medium. Maybe they've seen a 3D movie, but they don't think about how that's related to the ViewMaster toy they
right.
had
They're
as a kid.
comic books or
Right,
everything
yeah.
else. Yeah.
So being able to sort of tie it all together, the history, the technology, the art, the science, and have that all as something that people can experience, that's really what I'm into.
That's
The-
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, the minute you open this place, we're there.
You were
Yeah,
there.
totally.
Eric, thank
totally.
you so much for
thank
being
you.
with us.
Well,
and
Thanks so much for
Thank
having
you.
me. Thanks so much for having
Yeah,
me.
This is
you
so
were
cool.
terrific, and man, did I learn a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Then my job is done.
Time for listener shout out. This goes out to Denver Brubaker from
Denver
Oh my
Brubaker.
God.
Chicago,
What a great
Illinois.
name.
From where?
Chicago.
Chicago.
Denver Brubaker.
Denver,
great name.
Denver is a cartoonist and illustrator, and
And vigilante.
you can find Denver's work on journalintomystery.weebly.com.
Wow. Cool.
And Denver also very kindly contributed an original piece of artwork, the official Monster Party clown badge.
hey, that was
fantastic.
fun.
You can
Yeah.
see on
He's
our Twitter and Facebook.
He's the guy who did the clowns.
He's the guy who so thank you, Denver.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
And good luck with the
Clown.
punks.
Awesome.
Let's also remind our listeners that you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Monster Party TV. Our Twitter handle is at Monster Party HQ. Instagram is also Monster Party HQ. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please take a moment and write a review. We'd love to hear from you. You can also buy the official Monster Party cap on our eBay store, which is Monster Party Store. You guessed it. Easy to remember.
And if you get the cap, once you get it, you'll see that it's in 3D.
It is. And then look around because everything else is in 3D.
Yeah.
It's a 3D world.
Exactly. And I also, speaking of 3D World, want to thank our sponsors at Creature Feature. Yay! And again, I mentioned this before, guys. Creature Features, that look, these guys are leaving Burbank. Yes, they lost their lease, but it doesn't mean they're going away.
No?
No. They're still going to be around. The best thing to do, because these guys are still going to be doing art shows and they're going to be doing autographing books and all kinds of other great things. All you need to do is go to their website, creaturefeatures.com. There's actually a little area. If you go to contact, join mailing list, get on their mailing list, because once you do, it'll tell you everything that they're doing on a weekly basis.
Their last night gallery event
Oh my God.
was one of the high points of my life.
Wow.
It was so great to see those
Original night gallery
original
paintings.
Fantastic.
In front of you, in
Once in a
3D.
lifetime.
But
Yeah.
the cool thing, guys, is it's not going to end. They know so many other
They're
places
still
within
gonna
the
have
LA
their-
area.
They're
Yeah.
still going to have
They
their
can
art
come
shows.
here.
That, Well, yes, they can, but that they will be doing other art gallery shows in other places. Again, just go to their website, get on their newsletter, and it'll give you all the information. And again, I want to give a special thanks to Taylor, Eric, and Matt. You guys have done an amazing job.
Yes,
And,
we love you.
And eventually, guys, they may be opening another store, maybe out on the outskirts of Los Angeles. It's just a matter of time. So just
Right.
go to their website, get on their mailing list.
Yes.
Cool.
I also want to give a special thanks to Time Tunnel Toys. Time Tunnel Toys, located at 1583 Meridian Avenue in San Jose, California. Joe and Sharon have a beautiful store that has all this great vintage toy stuff, records, magazines, black velvet paintings, all the cool stuff.
Lenticulars?
And there's some lenticulars
Hey.
there. You know, they ain't cheap, I'll tell you that.
How about Viewmaster?
Well, they have those too.
I'm sure they
Do they
do.
have
Okay.
stereoscopes?
I don't know. You have to check. You have to go to their store and find out.
All right.
But the cool thing
Laser 3D projectors?
if you guys go to Time Tunnel Toys, timetunneltoys.com, you'll also be able to find out when they have their great super toy convention every 4 months. It's a wonderful convention filled with nothing but vintage toys.
Sounds good to me. On that note, I am lenticular Matt Weinhold.
I am Shawn Sheridan in 3D.
I'm stereoscopic Larry Stroth.
And I'm View Master James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
Watch a 3D movie. It's a lot easier than getting a lion in your lap.
What about the 4D, man? That's 4D.
Finally in 3 dimensions.
Eric, can I hear you? Let's hear what you say.
Yeah, I'm here.
Are you comfortable like that? You know, you can hold it like Elvis too.
There you go.
There you hey.
There we go. Okay.
Are you
Yeah.
comfortable there?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Great.
Have you done podcasts before?
One or two.
Okay.
Yes, but have they fed you? Have they fed you?
No,
And give you
no, no.
Okay.
Like, every guest that comes on, you gotta, like, guilt the guy.
No. I'm not making him guilt. I'm just pointing out how
Are you happy with
No,
what we...
no.
We
I
could be on another podcast, and everything could be going really wrong.
am pointing out how there are other podcasts out there that are just so subpar.
How superior we are.
Yeah,
They're two-dimensional.
Look, I don't want to say superior. You know, I don't want to get on that kick.
No.
No, you never.
You don't
get
want to
that
go
kick.
there.
No, but I'm just saying that, you know, we put on a good show and we treat our guests right.
We do.
I mean, you know, who gets fed, you know, who gets
It's
cocktail.
hospitality.
Yes.
Basic hospitality.
And we make you feel relaxed. Aren't you relaxed?
Yeah. I'm almost asleep. Actually.
No, now that's the wrong kind of relaxed. Okay? We don't want you that relaxed. We want you. I want you on fire. Yeah, I can't hear you, man.
That's not good.
No, I can't
Yeah,
hear
I
you.
can't hear you.
I can't hear
Sorry,
you.
can't hear me.
So the funny thing is, the King Kong behind Matt is actually from a Dynamite magazine. Do you guys remember Dynamite magazine?
Oh,
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm one of those kids. I love Dynamite magazine, but anytime if you put a monster in it, I mean, I was like all over it like a cheap suit.
Oh, sure.
And so they did a little 3D thing. And what's weird is, I had that in my room. Eric, use your 3D glasses. Here.
It's these little glasses.
It's these little glasses.
to make it look like it's jumping out.
I always carry a pair.
Oh, hey.
That's awesome. Like a little pocket 3D glass.
Is that neat, though? Is that neat?
Yeah.
I know. See, he's Mr. 3D. He's
like
not
instead
that.
of carrying condoms everywhere, he's got 3D glasses.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What do you think?
Very cool. I'm looking at the date on it. 75.
Yeah. And what's neat is what is it? It's a King Kong poster. It shows King Kong from 1933 on top of the Empire State Building. And what happens is what's cool is in the distance you can see the buildings they're in the red and blue kind of tint, and then the airplane in front with King Kong's arm. He's like reaching out at the airplane, and that's also in the red and blue. And so when you look at it, it looks like King Kong's arm is like reaching out and grabbing that plane that's just right out there. And it's...
The airplane and the arm are really the only things that are jumping out.
Yeah, so when I had it up in the room, part of it's, people would come over, oh, why is there bleeding? And it's like, no, it's a...
Hello.
Oh, hey.
Hey, okay.
Hey.
All right.
Okay, we've got Mr. Sexy back.
Well, I was just yesterday looking at the proofs for the Monsterpalooza program
Speaking of Mr. Sexy, yes?
because there's some 3D stuff in it.
Cool.
And it was just really funny. I went down to the litho printer and they were like, we weren't sure if this was right because it looks like the colors are mismatched. I was like, no.
Right.
I handed them the glasses. They're like, oh, okay.
One last thing.
Yeah, of course, Matt. Matt, take your time. You're doing great.
I have to take a shower.
Okay.
I remember one thing I remember about Dynamite magazine is that they came out with an issue that Cher was on the cover when she got her own show,
Right.
and she was wearing this like slinky dress. And my teacher at the time, like my 5th grade teacher, was like, "Oh boy, this is racy," and it was for kids. I mean, if they could put something
with
like
Cher,
that on the
yeah.
cover,
Somewhere I've still got the one with Chewbacca on the cover. Not quite as racy though.
Oh, yeah. He's naked though.
He's got his
Bandoiler strap.
yeah.
Did you know
Oh, that's true. That's true.
The
bandoiler strap.
Bandoiler?
Yes, bandoiler strap.
wow.
That was bandolier. Bandoiler? Bandoily?
It could be called that
A doily?
We're gonna save that for our Star Wars episode.
Yeah.
No, we're gonna save it for the Dynamite episode.
Yeah. That'd be cool. Actually, magazines.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Since
Just
there's no
magazines,
magazines
yeah.
anymore.
Do you know I have a Dynamite magazine that has... Remember Welcome Back, Kotter? Remember how popular
Yeah, I have that.
was?
Oh,
issue.
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Okay, so we know, okay. And my brother, who worked at an amusement park at the time, brought my Dynamite magazine with the Cotter kids on it because two of the guys were going to be at the amusement park, and he had them autographed.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Which ones? Like Horseshack and Epstein?
No,
Had to be.
Epstein and
Epstein wasn't
Washington?
there. Epstein wasn't there, but his mother. had
That's
given
right.
him-
I'd have liked to get an autograph of the principal. Carter!
Mr. Woodman.
Mr. Woodman.
time.
Yeah.
I liked him.
Hello, Mr. Woodman.
you know, I never understood what the sweat hog. What does that mean? I didn't understand. I don't get it.
It's like a gang.
Cool gang. The most benevolent gang ever.
Yeah.
Well, in the 70s, they had to come up with terms that sounded dirty but weren't, that they
Yeah,
could
yeah.
say on TV.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That makes sense.
So Vinnie Barbarino could say
Up your nose
with a rubber hose.
Yes, I remember.
Or Fonzie could say, sit on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
James,
Yeah.
where did you bring
Your special
stuff that I
paper?
need?
What?
Your special paper?
Special paper?
That you brought?
I did not bring special paper.
I thought you did bring special paper.
I thought you did too.
Why did you think that?
Because he
Sounded
asked
like you said you did.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Pepsi.
You
Pepsi.
said
I thought I heard Pepsi. I'm sorry.
Where?
Pepsi.
No, where? Come on.
No, seriously. I thought you were talking about Diet Pepsi. I didn't think you were talking about. I'm so sorry.
Matt, do you want me to?
There's some in there.
Let's
There's a little bit in there.
yeah. Let's
I'm sorry.
cross our fingers and hope for the best. Now, I did have prunes. The sweet and sour prunes
I could have
are.
sworn you were talking about Pepsi. I'm so sorry.
Paper towels.
You know, it's funny. I thought the exact same thing.
I think you're joking.
I sent you guys an email.
Yeah, well, I was on my way here
I was
when you
on the
sent
road.
that.
I'm
I
sorry.
was in the freeway in traffic.
We'll work it out. We'll work it out. We're gonna make this work. Damn it!
If I knew like
course.
earlier, like a couple hours, you know, I can't.
Because
Look, we'll just have to use the same sheet. Okay? I'll wash it. I'll run it in the dryer.
All right,
Eric, you should probably just go.
Erica, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry.
No, we're class act around here. Yeah.
But we did feed you.
Yeah. Now you get to, instead of toilet paper, you get our fancy towels. My wife will be delighted.
I worked for a French company.
Oh my
at one
God, you
point
have a
that-
story about this.
Yeah, no, you reminded me. I worked for some consulting for this company that was based in France, but they had an office like down by Universal. And in the bathroom at the guy's office, he just had like a big stack of washcloths.
No.
No.
And then there was a basket.
What?
Are you
And
kidding?
apparently that's the French way.
What?
In 3D.
France, I need to talk to you.
No, Europe is messed up because their plumbing system doesn't usually process toilet paper.
Well,
so they
I
have
guess-
to deal with other methods.
Well, now where
Why
you put
doesn't
them,
it-
was it like an open basket
It was
or?
just like a basket sitting
Oh
there. Yeah.
no! There should be a chute that just.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, it should
wait. Did
shoot
the
it into
basket
the
have?
Thames.
Did the basket have a lid?
Decontamination
I think it was a wicker basket with a lid.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Okay.
God!
Well, at least Matt, at least it had a lid.
There should be a fire going in there or something. Wow, that is unbelievable.
Although the best, I was in Seoul, South Korea,
Okay.
and they had, I guess it was a Japanese toilet seat
Oh sure, yeah.
Yeah,
with
The high-end ones.
with like a control panel on the
Sure.
side.
Oh, they're beautiful.
With all these different buttons.
Yeah.
Right.
Of like
music,
selectable
and-
sprays.
Sure. Yeah.
Selectable spray.
Mine
Selectable
shoot.
sprays, and then there was a picture of like a cartoon butt with a spray. There was
I know
a
it
picture
well.
of-
Right.
And then there was one.
I have the
picture,
original
One
artwork.
picture that was just like a big smiley face.
What was
What
that?
does that mean?
I never quite got up the courage to push it.
See, I would have went right for that.
You know what? I think I would have tried
Yeah.
that too. Yeah, it's got a smiley face on it.
Yeah, and just a clown just drops from the ceiling.
Peas on you.
Okay, you know this is great.
Going to the
toilet can be fun.
Let's test our levels.
Everybody levels.
3D.
Great.
Testing
Yeah,
levels.
in 3D.
Test, I'm good.
Everybody good.
So again, Eric, Matt's going to introduce. He does this funny little
right.
monster thing. We introduce ourselves. We say what the show is. I'll introduce you, and then we'll go to town. All right?
Okay.
All right. In 3D.
All right.
I can't help it.
What do you mean you can't help?
I just
What does that mean?
it means it's 3D.
You made some sounds.
No, it's
and then
like
you said I can't help it.
my
It's like-
hands.
It's like the old SCTV sketch.
Yes, we'll talk about that. But it's like my hands. I just feel I want to reach out and grab you. You know, kind of a thing.
Okay. Wow.
Okay.
Save that for the after
okay,
party.
Okay, we're ready to go.
And you
here.
know what? Sean is not that easy. No. He needs a drink. He needs courting.
Okay, let's do
Here we
this.
go.
Here we go.
Keep America Strong. Watch a 3D movie. It's a lot easier than getting a lion into your lap.
Oh, that's great. That's great. But of course, now I can't hear myself.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I cannot hear
Oh
myself.
no.
I cannot hear myself. Oh, never mind. No, I was
Help
off.
if you turn
I'm
it
sorry,
on.
buddy.
Whoa.
All right.
Well, I didn't turn it
What's going
off.
on?
There
Maybe
you go.
someone next to me turned it off
Oh,
because I was
my
talking.
God.
Okay,
Sabotage.
Matt, we're ready.
Sabotage.
Sabotage.
You say sabotage, I say sabotage.
Let's call the whole thing off.
Let's call the whole thing off.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm
All
ready.
right. Go, man, go. On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I am Shawn Sheridan in 3D. Okay, sorry.
Should we?
Well, now we've stopped. Now it's. But if you want to say that, I don't care.
No, it's fine. I don't know. I went crazy.
Because I felt like I.
All this guy ever does is add his own things. It's Sean's time to shine.
All right, I'll just okay.
All right.
Okay.
Larry, why are you?
No. It's like,
I'm just joking
You
with
can
you.
see your stereoscopic Larry.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Are you gonna call yourself something?
Oh, God. Now the
Your
pressure.
Buana Gonis.
That's okay. I'm just using Larry. I'm just using you to get him to come out of his shell.
I like this, but I'm gonna say I'm stereoscopic.
Okay.
I need to be. What was the?
Viewmaster Weinhold.
No. What was the one before that? The.
What was the other one? Lenticular Weinhold.
I like that.
Okay.
I like that.
Okay, so you got something. You can
I'll
be
be-
Viewmaster,
I'll be Buana.
Yeah, Buana Gonis.
but that's the name of a title.
I know, but
you
it's
got to be.
funny.
Hey, let him.
All right, fine.
That's what he wants.
Fine. Okay.
As misguided as it is.
I don't really care.
Don't you?
Care? You don't care?
Take a vote.
You should. Okay, I vote. Okay. You want me to vote?
Yeah.
I vote
See,
Viewmaster.
Okay.
What do you vote?
For
Buana?
James?
Yeah, Buana or Viewmaster.
I like Viewmaster.
Viewmaster makes sense.
All right.
Oh,
I'll take Viewmaster.
Okay.
God. This is right. This is like right before the Beatles broke up. Okay, here we go.
Ringo would just not be Viewmaster. That was it.
Buana Star?
That's what Diana Ross said.
Did she?
She did.
She's always talking.